Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Batman Arkham Asylum is a masterpiece, so they say. But why? Innovative mechanics, immersive design, an authentic representation of the globally adored Gotham mythos that altogether really made you feel like Batman. And if you haven't felt it firsthand, chances are you've felt the shockwave of its success in New York, Hong Kong, Middle-earth, or Australia. It's only fair the Dark Knight's first hit video game should have its own myth, its own legend. But like any legend, a few details are left out. The atrocious plotting, the imbalanced stealth, its poor gadgets, its shallow combat, its failed Metroidvania structure. Arkham Asylum is not a masterpiece. Brilliant, but not always excellent. Creative, not always competent. City has the chance to be both. Will it truly fix Asylum's problems, or will it get no further than half-baked band-aids? They say it is a masterpiece too. Will fixing Asylum's problems be enough to live up to the legend? Big questions, but the stakes aren't quite set yet. We need to dig a little deeper. Feeling nostalgic? That's the idea. Asylum was a small game, but a massive success, and City lived in its towering shadow. The first stealth encounter is the only space in Arkham City with such striking resemblance to the Gothic Asylum. It stands between you and remembering that dark night with surviving guard Aaron Cash. It's behind Harley Cringe, back to get completely Shrek'd yet again in exactly the same way she did before, flaunting the shadow of Asylum unreservedly to tug on the heartstrings of enamored fans. To say yes, this is the new Asylum was probably an important statement for the sequel to such a smash hit, and City makes it very well. But it was definitely the easy part, because for a Western AAA developer, Rocksteady have proven themselves groundbreaking pioneers and tenaciously creative in every aspect of their work. They have yet to release a product that did not bleed with the interesting and the special. But when you've struck gold, no one wants you to risk leaving the gold mine. The safety of formula and passionate creativity are ancient enemies. Just ask a crowd, half will tell you. The next time Rocksteady fought it, they lost. So the hard part comes now, staying true to your creative spirit while stuck in the shadow of your own fat dub, balancing a sequel's improvements and innovations while remaining firmly Arkham. These are the stakes. Night was round 2, City was round 1, and its first move shows its confidence. A brutal introduction with a simple statement. This is Asylum, but bigger, in size and in stakes. It's still a prison, but it's a bigger prison, with bigger walls, bigger guns, and bigger ambitions. Bigger than any on Earth. In 8 hours, Protocol 10 will commence, but no one knows what it is. No one except Hugo Strange, the elusive warden, him and his bigger threat. Your capture in this naked, disempowered form is a smart way to put you in place for tutorialization, and a perfect way to qualify the power we are to believe Strange possesses. In 60 seconds, Rocksteady beat the same drum as we stagger through processing. The simmering tension of Asylum's introduction is gone, but in return we receive pure intimidation. Now that's how you get me pumped for a sequel. Scale, cruelty, hordes of bloodlusting hyenas, and as soon as the doors crack open, Penguin is there to welcome you with a boot to the head. In 9 hours, Arkham City will end and be exalted as a masterpiece. In 2 hours, you'll have seen it, and I guarantee you that in 30,000 words, you'll know exactly why and exactly if that was ever true. This is not a conventional video, so perhaps it's worth introducing what it is you've actually clicked on too, within a commentary, a critique, an analysis, and a journey that was made for you, fan of the game, as much as it was for you who never played it. We are going end to end to find our answers to the questions we've asked, and a hell of a lot more. But the definition of commentary is not entirely clear. With Darksiders, we closely followed an edited playthrough to talk about things as they came. With Death Stranding, we closely followed a far less edited playthrough to give us the time to talk about practically anything. If that was like a Let's Play with an amateur audiobook stapled on, this is more of a review movie. Tight, highly edited, and a little cinematic. You'll see. It also follows our central playthrough far more loosely than other commentaries. We'll still bring things up where and when it makes most sense to do so, but there'll also be a lot of time jumping, which allows us to bunch like subjects close together. In other words, to not make the mistake the Asylum video made. Finally, I'd like to preface that Arkham City is a sequel, a foundation, and what many would consider the peak of Arkham. So to truly understand it, and to learn the most from it, this game cannot and should not be addressed in a vacuum. Every Arkham has a role to play, big or small, tonight. In the first part of this video, we're going to look at Arkham City as a sequel in the most measurable ways we can, with systems, levels, and mechanics. How will they wrestle the shadow of Asylum, and will that be enough to make a masterpiece? In a way, the very first choice the player makes is between two symbols of the attempt. Rescue Catwoman, a new playable character with her very own subplot to support, just after Rocksteady had made the first one work. Or explore the open world, a fundamental departure from Asylum's Metroidvania design, supposedly. For your sake, I chose, earlier, I also found out that the courthouse is split up the middle, just like Two-Face. Only took me 200 hours to notice. And then I decided to rescue Catwoman. I had to, they were going to force her to drink Joker's Mountain Dew when she obviously would have preferred Gamer-Supps with 10% off a code Whitelight. So she made a shit pun.
You certainly know how to keep a girl hanging, Harv.
Joker tried to blow her away, and as for Two-Face...
They're calling him One-Face now.
Yeah, it was chaos, but now it's not, and we can look beyond. To Arkham City? What does that really mean? A fundamental innovation in Rocksteady's world design? Or simply a bigger, improved Asylum? It's easiest to believe the former, because what City meant to marketers and excited fans alike was open world. But today, for open worlds everywhere, including this one, there are some who wouldn't use the word innovation. There are some who believe this is where a plummeting trend in Arkham games began, that walked further and further away from the dense, robust design of Asylum. Well, how about a magic trick? I'm gonna make this misconception disappear. Whipped by a rabid sea, Gotham is scored by open wounds, and the pathogens fester around it, trapped in by the prison walls. But above all, it's kind of like a toilet seat. Because it's a shithole. And because that's how it's shaped. On the western leg, the Sionis Steel Mill is Joker's newest castle. Moated, jagged, it's a blend of fun and fire, just like its king. The drawbridge moves into unclaimed street space dotted by the GCPD. You'll need to defrost the police to defund them. Freeze lurks in the ice-cold morgue. Ivy's seen better days down south. As we roll down the curve past a battered highway, desolate streets, the ledge of Ace Chemicals and Two-Face's courthouse, alleys, gates, and smashed-in storefronts lead through a fossilized market to Penguin's Natural History Museum on the other side of the curve. This is a world punctuated by characterized landmarks, an architectural shadow of Batman's Rogues Gallery, useful for navigation, but also authentic and atmospheric, like the bolder use of prison space that excuses density, keeps villains close together, and creates a sense of entrapment. Artistic preferences aside, the fundamental strengths of Asylum are still here. What exactly did we lose? Well, supposedly, open world diluted the density and focus of Asylum's design. It is true that Arkham City is 5 times bigger, but if you want to talk density, then we need to talk velocity. Not just a fancy synonym for speed. Velocity means speed in a given direction, because where Asylum stretched flat, empty spaces Batman could only run upon around an indirect circle, City cuts out the choke points, then lets us spread our wings. All the more grapple points means all the more glides, and all the more glides mean all the more dives, raising the speed with which you take more direct paths. Oh, City is bigger, but Batman is faster. Open world didn't dilute Arkham, it functionally condensed it, while enhancing the fantasy in the very same swoop. So if not density, then what exactly did we lose? There's only one thing left to lose: the benefits of a closed world. Arkham Asylum was a Metroidvania, and you could tell. Progressively acquired gadgets, Rewards for return visits to old locations in a strikingly small, restrictive world. But the one characteristic it didn't have was depth in pathfinding, where a careful balance of connections and restrictions can sculpt world design into an array of balanced options to make meaningful choices between. It is the gamification of deciding where to go. You may consider speed, rewards, or obstacles along the routes you take in a way you never could in a flatter, open world. But you never could in Asylum either. It may have been fertile ground for ivy, but its courts, halls, and sewers, tight and restricted as they may be, lacked connection. There was simply nothing to choose. Nothing but the choice between the shortest of two paths around the circular ring road. City has no such potential, but not for the reason you'd think. From just below the museum, the subway network takes us beneath the crust of our Gotham and into the mummified undercity of the civilization before. Take it in. Stand around too long, and it'll take you. But now you'll recognize it when we arrive here again from the sewers below a hole in Joker's steel mill. So yeah, you can complete the toilet seat by cutting under Strange's stronghold. Yeah, a varied way to travel it may be, it's hardly a viable choice because it's actually a long cut, but yeah, the open world game is nearly as good a Metroidvania as the Metroidvania. So what exactly did we lose? For Arkham, changing the bedrock of world design simply meant thickening the donut. And yeah, I'm spelling thick with 2 C's.
It's gone.
Improvement that appears like innovation. How about that? But I wouldn't call it perfect yet. There are more ways to interact with the world than deciding where to go. Like, for example, going, improvement, and innovation. Our brand new movement system, where the old is made better and married to something new. Someone new too. All movement begins with a grapple. What's the first thing you notice? More to grapple onto, absolutely. But look closer. Architectural chaos. Good look for a mad city. But chaos means varied building heights, and varied heights means you've got a reason to choose where to grapple. The higher the better. Or if you're using the grapnel boost, the fewer obstructions in your way. And because grapples can now be cancelled, we further expand into advanced techniques for precision, for crossing short distances quickly, and for making rapid turns. Big challenge, big payoff. Its vast range of applications makes that exciting risk-reward consistently relevant, completing the first layers of thought in Arkham City's movement. Catwoman has to think differently. Batman has more range. Selina has a whip. Batman has a winch. Selina has a whip. So she yanks hard and bursts towards her target. Just not always all the way. Yeah, you can leap off rooftops and swing to recovery. Oh yeah, it feels good when the animations seamlessly flow together as she does through the air. And those chaotic choices mean a lot when the cost of a bad pick is so great. The higher the better, but not so high you're stuck too long in the time-consuming climb sequence. This slight shift in consideration repeated across the hundreds of times you'll whip makes Catwoman a tangibly different experience from her winged counterpart, and that variation ain't nothing but positive. How about another example? As Batman gets to take Arkham City for granted, the whip's low range can put Catwoman in places where the only way out is back. Restriction forces reconsideration. That is one more thin layer of thought for Arkham. Whereas, even a mile out of range, Batman need only use momentum. What could be more simple an innovation, yet expand on the glide more significantly than momentum and a dive? Rocksteady's brilliance swoops into play, allowing Batman to extend his flight and land in style, but not without a challenge. Dive too long, dive too little. You sacrifice altitude for poor returns on speed. Mastery comes first in cost effectiveness, knowing when to get the best bang for your buck. But dive at all, and as per the laws of physics, you will continue to descend after you pull up, for as long as it takes to sap your downward momentum. This delay adds challenge to precision, like firing ahead of your target in Far Cry. Mastery comes second in accounting for what this cape is capable of. Arkham City is stacked with intersecting pipes, girders, and railings to act as perches and grappling points, but just the right alignment makes for us a challenge. Thread the needle. And as that brings us to the ground, we are brought to the end of our movement overview. But I fear that happened far too soon. Arkham was never sold on the fantasy of Batman's movement. It didn't need to match the strength of Spidey, Rico, and Alex Mercer. But after City's content had run dry and the toughest enemies had despawned, its movement system was never enough to keep people coming back. Endgame free roam is a casualty of its mediocrity. But if you'd like the stakes a little higher, consider what we're about to say, a critique of the whole damn franchise. Because as time went by and Arkham's worlds got bigger, the system City began never got better than just okay. In a game like this, just okay is an assessment I intend to prove, so perhaps the right time for this video to get surgical is now. Let's talk about the power of belief. If you believe your influence on succeeding at a goal was meaningful, your brain will reward you. Game design is the science of exploiting that mechanism, and looking at things from this fundamental baseline explains both Arkham City and Guitar Hero simply. But with just one more layer of specificity, you can put nearly all modern video games under the microscope. A desired success, otherwise known as a goal, can be set extrinsically by the game or intrinsically by you. A player may want to do something the game hasn't incentivized. That's subjective, but it's still a goal. Challenge then is the difficulty of succeeding, and depth is what you can do to succeed. It's your options, balanced relative to the goal. Depth works because having to choose between wrong or less effective options and right or more effective options makes your influence on success meaningful. Now here's the twist. Some intrinsic goals are functionally extrinsic because we all share them. The game provides no motive to cross the city quickly or effectively, but we will try to nevertheless. Just like we will in Just Cause, Spider-Man and GTA. Just like we'll perform well in Arkham's combat instead of doing the bare minimum. We all try to be efficient. Why? Because human psychology motivates efficiency, but also because in video games, efficiency is reliably fun. Why? Because the goal of efficiency makes the most options relevant, and getting better provides a consistent challenge. In games, goal efficiency reliably applies to everyone. That makes the depth relative to this goal vital. With no other incentive structure, Arkham City's movement lives or dies by efficiency. It will not survive for long. Despite the best efforts of architectural variation, balanced options are not present every time you grapple, and even when a choice is present, the difference between the best grapple possible and the worst one is rarely more than a split second. You have a reason to choose, it's just not a very good one. And so despite their frequency, they are a weak foundation for the movement's depth, whether or not they were designed to be. Getting the best bang for your buck on a dive is always useful. Accounting for the pull-up delay, rarely. The bulky bisections near the museum pose a threat, but there's nowhere else, and nothing more complex, that won't slow you down or ground you. This is like 360 no-scoping a tree, worth putting on your Tinder profile, but not very useful. Cancel culture faces a different problem. In Arkham City, it really doesn't exist, because 98% of you are hearing about it for the first time tonight. It's a hidden feature. Yeah. Kind of a big deal. The city itself, meanwhile, is tight enough to keep whips and grapples frequent, yet so tight that dives, the deepest part, are often brief and less frequent than they would otherwise be. A difficult balance to strike. But even if there were a perfect middle ground, how much would it help us? The jagged archipelago of a dock's rot and a city's ruins is an arena to spread our wings, but even pushed as far as it'll go, there just isn't that much to do with Arkham's physics-based gliding. It's perfectly stable, particularly slow, gliding. 3 seconds of dive, the depth of when to pull up, then 5 to 10 seconds of insignificant fine control. The similar grapple-glide relationship of Just Cause gives this issue dimension. Being slower, choices within the dive and where to grapple don't come at you as quickly. Being perfectly stable, the glide itself, the longest part, requires no attention. If there's an upside, it's how well this aligns City with another game you might have heard of. Riddle me this: what's quicker than a cat, sneakier than a bat, and a complete prick? Spider-Man, whose depth of efficiency is no greater, and yet whose movement is all the better, all the same. Why? Well, for one, because it feels good. It feels a 15-hour campaign can get by on a system that practically plays itself good. And Batman does not feel that good. For another, Spider-Man has the chance to optimize his movement with inconsequential flair. The depth of style of what looks cool is as subjective as it gets. Its ability to help us can be measured by its depth and its appeal. And by Miles Morales, that was quite something. Spins, flips, and dives with alternate backwards-facing variants composed a vibrant source of whimsical depth after the 10 seconds it took for goal efficiency to run dry. You can choose, you can think. It's intrinsic, so you can choose to think, and I strongly suggest you do. So what can Batman choose? Well, hold the run button as you grapple onto a ledge for a roll animation. You can roll over a ledge for a cool flip. Hey, you could rope launcher if you're feeling disco. Oh dear. I'd argue we're lacking appeal. At least Spider-Man's tricks cohere with the Spider-Man fantasy, making them more intrinsically attractive in that context. Does this scream Batman to you? And that may be subjective, but our lack of options is measurable. So is our lack of depth. Rocksteady was under no obligation to flesh this out. Arkham does not need intrinsic options, but its movement needs a savior, and its style is not enough. This is the problem of depth, but Batman's problem is Catwoman's curse. Running out of range is a fun problem to deal with, but you could go an entire playthrough without facing it once. And those grapple choices may have great consequences for her, but not for a good reason. 1 part whips, 1 part follow-up climbs. I said you'll seek to avoid the latter. I never told you speed wasn't the only reason why. This is a challenge of timing, and so for a time, far more difficult than climbing a similar wall in Assassin's Creed or Shadow of Mordor, but it will always be shallower. Batman's lack of depth is relative. There is enough fuel in his tank to coast, but when I say Catwoman's climbing is shallow, I mean it mathematically. What little depth can be found is actively suicidal. Want to see it jump? When I choose where to whip, I cannot precisely predict where she will land, and so I cannot precisely predict how long I will spend in the following climb. This is a punctured lung for depth. My choices lose meaning as they are divorced from their outcome, and as the climb begins, its nature is similarly unpredictable. Sometimes I'll get a zigzag, other times it's a straight shot. I can't know which, I can only obey. At which point we have 2 choices, continue up or drop down. 1 or 0, American or Americant, making an Americant of our situation. That punctured lung is the least of our worries. There's nothing anyone could do to help a movement system survive on a binary. Like Catwoman, Guitar Hero is pure challenge, no depth. But its musical context doesn't make me want to break free of my guitar's 4 buttons. The context of a movement system comes with a fantasy of freedom, any inevitable intrinsic wish to parkour, eject backwards, or something as simple as moving left and right is locked outside. The will to express oneself, hopelessly shaking the bars of an impenetrable binary. A binary that will quickly rot inside the prison. You see, Guitar Hero's second trick is keeping things fresh with rapidly increasing and rapidly varying challenge. Catwoman's is static from the start to the end, so willingly or not, your brain will shortly relegate it to muscle memory, smothering what little spark of engagement it had. When half your time is spent in this situation, and a good part of the other half is spent trying to avoid it, the problem of depth is cat poison. A vast improvement over the Asylum, a vast gap to cross before this traversal can stand on its own 2 legs. And it's a damn shame it never did. As for City, let's wrap things up. We've lost endgame free roam, but for the short time Catwoman is needed by the campaign, the shallowness doesn't have the time to put you off for good, and her contrast to Batman in mechanics and sensation is at its strongest. For many, that will be enough. And as for Batman, well, there's a reason I specified endgame free roam. For the duration of the campaign, the movement system does not stand alone out here in Arkham City. It stands with the people in it. And don't be surprised, I told you this was a reflection of Asylum. I meant it. Welcome back. I was just planning the route for my next bi-hourly Bat Marathon. This time I think we're following the stench of someone's unwashed socks, but I might as well put the map away. World-scale level design has nothing to offer, and movement is holding the run button. But the journey will be fun, because of the encounters on the way, the enemies, their placement, the level design they inhabit. What happens when you bring that philosophy into the architectural Jenga of a dense urban sprawl? What happens is Rocksteady construct a crutch for their movement. I've shown you the past, now let me show you the future. With 1 hour left on the clock, the night is deep and full of weapons. Movement has become a considered process it never used to be. Some routes are dangerous, others are suicide, and they will jumble and reconfigure from the start until the clock strikes 10. They will make you think differently. But if avoiding these enemies is movement, then tackling them is stealth, and with a few new tricks, it can be just as unfamiliar Out in the open, Batman doesn't have to stay silent to play the Predator. He just needs to make sure no one gets the chance to fire. The grapnel boost takedown, a test of positioning and forward planning. The dive bomb shockwave, a test of target prioritization and precision. The dive bomb slam, with a test of movement, positioning, and prioritization. Batman can KO anyone behind his target if you connect with enough speed. Not the sneakiest of entrances, but in a world ruled by guns, explosive action is as challenging and effective as it is contrasting to the enclosed invisible stalker. Neither is it any less strategic. Watch. No gargoyles, any route of entry we please, and 5 armed guards. So what next? In Arkham City, the late-game disruptor can fry any 2 from range. I picked the extremes because one of them is where the slam and its shockwave is most likely to miss. Now I look for a high point. Grapnel boost. Swoop around. Dive bomb. Crash. Was that any less sophisticated than your average play in Predator? To the contrary, that was more, and it is only one example. The Batclaw, Smoke Bomb, and Freeze Grenade, all used as a last resort inside, are valuable tools used with deliberate intent outside. It is as deep, it is as much of a Batman fantasy, and yet these visions of stealth are nothing alike, giving it freshness too. Explosive play is riskier, but it's also quicker, by literal leaps and bounds. Speed is an efficiency incentive, and that makes it a relevant, balanced choice. But unfortunately, I must make one reservation, that parts of that choice may not exist. Slam, Crash, and Shockwave are all upgrades, so there's no guarantee you'll ever unlock them, much less familiarize yourself with them. Gadgets exist for everyone, but never being told or shown the merits of a slam makes a tragedy. How many playthroughs go by never reaching City's triumphant potential? It is an uncertain victory, made of 3 parts. We've seen the systemic innovation, we know the role of enemy placement, but what about the places to place them? The last part of this puzzle is Arkham City's smaller, encounter-scale level design, and perhaps it is the most important part, because its effect applies to every type of City's open-world gameplay, in the future, the past, or in the present. 8 hours out, we have time to look at things from a larger scale. Deep in Penguin's territory, overlooking the museum. Perhaps you're having flashbacks. No, it's not madness. It's where madness was treated. 3 distinct layers, an uppermost platform, a middle, and a thinner bottom snugly indented in the middle. Now let's look at that again. An uppermost platform, a middle, and a thinner bottom snugly indented in the middle. Welcome back to Arkham Medical, a series of cascading platforms designed to complexly weave sightlines and pathways into a small space. Why? Because as opposed to an empty, featureless room with an infinite number of meaningless choices, the arena's balance of connection and restriction gives us a small number of choices, all with meaningful consequences, packed densely. Its geometric depth. And now it is a city. 100 square meters is 1,000 in surface area. Alleys crisscross watchtowers and platforms, closing sightlines but opening them in a musically struck balance to maximize encounter space and to maximize meaningful choice. In the confines of a Predator arena, if you could see them, they could see you. But with the exception of Joker's late-game snipers, Arkham City's vast distances changes the pressures. Out here, Batman more often connects encounters purely by will, as in if he wants to. But because choices are so dense, everyone will want to, sometimes. From a fight down low, a grapple is all it takes to zip up to a connecting watchtower. Glide kick or dive bomb across to a lower platform, and another selection of opportunities presents itself. New tools, evolving enemies, and level design in concert provides us a bounty of opportunities, so omnipresent you're likely to take some, at the very least, because some will always be in your way. So omnipresent that a tight string of movement, combat, and stealth is pulled together and could take incalculable forms. No 2 trips are the same in Arkham City, but all of them can be mechanically exciting. That is how City makes each journey compelling. That is the crutch of a mediocre movement system. That is how high Arkham Asylum's foundations have reached, and as it brings us to the ground, it brings us to the end of open-world gameplay, right on time. But we should know by now, Rocksteady's advancements are far from finished. And how will we see them? The Holy Lad of God, brothers and sisters. The introduction taught us the importance of this church, but now our journey is woven around the spire once again. There is a holy trinity of things we need to see. The first of which is the simplest, and you'll soon find out why that's a surprise. How does City fix Predator? Well, why does it need fixing? In a word, Asylum's problem was gargoyles. The level design was magical but meaningless if your best play was always a repeated string of inverted takedowns from an abundance of safe, abusable vantage points. City takes immediate action. The church teaches us a new variety of takedowns designed for the lower environments. Ledge, overhang, environmental, and double, while being the prototypical example for City's use of gargoyles. There are fewer, and they are placed where enemies are less likely to patrol. In Asylum, the gargoyle was the play. In City, the gargoyle represents a fast travel point into a different and more difficult play. In 2 sentences, that is the difference between them, and its simplicity fails to convey the significance of its effect. With this lethal imbalance addressed, our prayers have been answered. Predator is back, and the second exhibit is only upstairs. Whoever took a shot at Catwoman fired from the bell tower. It was Joker, supposedly, but do you really believe that? Joker? An MLG sniper? I'm not so confident in Harley either.
He's not feeling himself. Well, actually, he was earlier, but that's not what I meant.
You see, through Act 1, the plot is driven by a band of mysteries. I say driven because Batman is moved through the city by his resolve to solve. No one involved will be absolved. Some spines may be dissolved to discover 1. The nature of Arkham City, 2. The nature of Protocol 10, 3. The nature of the Joker, his plans and his health. Is he really sick? Or just playing another sick joke?
There's the gun. It looks like it's being controlled remotely by Joker.
Well, well, well. An aimbot. Why am I not surprised?
You just need to worry about the bombs.
Yeah, Act 1 is also briskly paced. It shows you the ropes and the roads and the beatings and the horrors. And it shows you mysteries to be intrigued by and mechanics to be engaged by, in slickly tutorialized form. Start with Bruce Wayne literally cuffed, then blossom into Batman's full moveset. Catwoman's shooter just so happened to live in a Predator arena. Rocksteady teach mechanics, establish plot, vary, and do it all at a high pace. I have nothing but praise for the game's first hour. But as much as I'm now excited to go get Joker, there's another layer to the mystery-driven beginning. There's someone else in the church now. The third exhibit. Someone perfectly appropriate. Someone we need to see. Because the next system on our list is gadgets. Seems natural for a Batman game to utilize his utility belt, but Asylum needed them for more than just the fantasy. When your game is supported by a Metroidvania's skeleton, you mean for just about everywhere to be visited more than once. You lock pathways behind doors, or obstacles that function as doors because they too can only be overcome with a later found key, an item, a tool, an ability. Hollow Knight, Zelda, Darksiders 3. Games, Rocksteady's Bat-Zelda among them, whose locks and keys are themselves supplementary gameplay mechanics that will create and vary encounters throughout the campaign. The madhouse was saturated with all the Bat's gadgets and all their many uses. Squeeze it and they'd come gushing out. That was a problem, because be it for the campaign or return visits, the depth, challenge, and novelty was the same. 0. Oh no, there's a chasm! What in the world am I going to do? Won't someone save me? Oh, I have the line launcher, my word. I should rent around a trailer to carry the weight of my genius. Not like this was also the solution the last 68 fucking times. A weak wall, blow it up. A grate, pull it down. A panel, hack it. Whitelight? Sounds like a fucking bop it. City's most effective course of treatment is simple: reduce their presence in the campaign. Brain-dead applications don't kill me when they're not omnipresent, and City would still be an improvement even if they were, because where the explosive gel or backclaw chained you to a static animation, the remote electric charge is City's go-to, which, being a firearm, doesn't force you to stop moving. The bad news is, something abominable slipped through the sequel's cracks: the cryptographic sequencer. It really puts the crypt in cryptography. You are nailed in place. Then, to make a red light greener, now to hack Strange's Fortnite account with Scrabble. Rocksteady are Brits, so maybe they watch too much Countdown, but even Roisin could get a 9-letter word in Arkham City, because despite appearances, nothing's actually changed. You swirl the stick until you stumble upon the correct answer, a rule without exception for 98% of the game.
Hey, what's he doing? He's got some kind of computer thing.
Yeah, I fucking wish.
How'd he do that? You said he couldn't get through.
One step nowhere, one step forward. Here's another one, because for the first time, City brings smarter applications into the campaign. Most demands of the line launcher make use of its new ability to flip mid-flight, where the timing window to pull that off accurately is game enough to surpass Asylum tenfold. But to escape Asylum, you'll need a raft made from a freeze grenade and pulled with a very lengthy backclaw. A limited selection of hook points creates a challenge. The sensation of motion does the rest, to justify its inclusion once. It's justified again by an opposing current, adding to the feel and adding to the depth, as you have to complete tasks in a limited time window. Up next for the campaign is radio silence. With a trend of reduction and a larger trend of withdrawal from their Metroidvania roots, I wondered if this marked the beginning of what I would be tempted to do. De-emphasize this tertiary system entirely, give up on bringing gadgets to the standard of everything else. But I'm not Rocksteady. They didn't give up. That's why we came here. It's time to find out if they should've. Word of warning, this guy's a bit of a dickhead, so just bear with me, alright?
Oh no! Where have they gone? Could it be that while you were out doing what you do, I, the Riddler, snuck in and took all those poor, stupid fools?
Where have you taken them?
Questions, questions, Dark Knight. It's not you who needs answers here, it's me. You answer my riddles and I tell you where they are. You answer my riddles and they don't die. So, shall we begin? I'm an instrument whose... Well done! See, you can...
After losing his mind at a young age when he discovered he couldn't say his full name because he was white, Edward got bitten by a radioactive Reddit mod and resigned himself to a life of crime. Run the tape. Oh, and... Hey, oh god! Drop a banger! Thank you. In Arkham Asylum, Riddler trophies were a standard matter of lock and key. No deeper than the campaign's shallow puddle 9 times out of 10. Optional, yes, but if temptation took only a quarter, that's still 60. In City, it'll be 100. What happens to Riddler's designs happen to gadgets. What happens to Riddler's portrayal happens to your motivation to engage in those designs. And perhaps the most interesting part about Riddler in Asylum was that people were motivated to find his trophies with no in-game incentive. They were motivated because he was the greatest victory of its ambition to contextualize as much of the game as possible as an expression of the villains. Most games require suspension of disbelief. Arkham uses character. Want a puzzle? Make it an unexpected death trap from Joker. Want to evolve its enemy variety? Have Ivy cover the asylum in plants. And most brilliantly, you want collectibles? Write a couple voice lines for the Riddler. Some dialogue was the difference between 240 pickups and an unforgettable character. A minuscule presence cast a very large shadow. An illusion of something larger that played narrative incentive to keep up the search. What Asylum started, City will expand. His presence has blossomed beyond a convincing dressing, his face to back his voice. And of course, a little more incentive. Cash and the medical team are taken hostage in a series of 4 bona fide puzzle chambers. I could not live with myself if Cash loses his other hand. Thugs, meanwhile, are taken as spies, so Riddler can even integrate with combat, and 400 trophies to Asylum's 240. You want to know where they are? Well, just ask nicely.
I know you work for Riddler.
Please, don't hurt me. I'll tell you what you want to know.
It's been a pleasure.
Now that's a Be the Batman fantasy. You know who works for Riddler, and you decide where Batman goes. For the first time, that shapes combat into an inversion of your instincts for target prioritization. Usually you're aiming for someone, not away. It can be an interesting wrench in the works of a fight, and no less badass by the end. So, do you want the good news or the bad news? Yo Bruce, it's me, Alfred, your faithful butler. Just calling to let you know that this video is now sponsored by Squarespace, and so's your suit and earpiece, so listen up. The internet's a big place. The website remains the best way to conquer it, where every worthwhile fiber of the web can be woven around one simple axis. Writing, social media, business. Business, you know, that thing that I now have to do. In the imaginary world where our CEO knew what his company was called and we actually made anything, we could sell it with Squarespace's seamless store integration. We could let everyone know with inbuilt blogs, or just a select few with members-only spaces. We could schedule the posts ahead of time so you don't even have to be there. What a change that would be, and wrap it all up in the comfortable minimalism of Squarespace's intuitive but capable site builder. If you weren't busy getting rejected, you could see for yourself, because you only need to bring out your card when the site's ready to be published. So, to help the company for once, and for 10% off, head to squarespace.com/whitelight and use offer code Whitelight. Whitelight's just some guy, don't question it. Alfredo out. Article 1 of the bad news is having to watch the same animation for the 268th time because of shit like this. That's just fucking great. Good news is, for every instance of this, there's an instance of something better. A puzzle. You are a rat in a maze. Come on, get over there. No, not that way. But we aren't just pulling the trophy with electromagnets, we also control the inner gates from this platform. Reading a complex pathway and planning inputs thereon is a smart test of smarts, or in other words, whittling down the possibility space to find the best sequence of inputs. What if you were the bat in a maze? What if it was your remote-controlled Batarang? One of Rocksteady's most effective puzzle techniques is challenging you to get from A to B on a tight enough time window that once meaningless possibilities in level design become a functional maze, as the cave was to the trophy. Repurposing pre-existing levels with a few plates, buttons, and a countdown is perhaps why they're so common. But common is no downside. No two repeat premises share a solution, or are configured identically, and that way none are trivialized by forward knowledge. Using the full range of Batman's motion to sequence and execute behind the courthouse is technically the same type of puzzle as guiding a Batarang through a vent, and obviously the same puzzle type as other movement sequences, but none are numbed by repetition. Perhaps the best example would be Arkham's iconic bouquet of neon question marks. An early application puts a twist on the classic quickfire exercise. The window of opportunity is far shorter than the time it takes to fire a Batarang, so you need to shoot far ahead of when the light is lit. The next one I find is caged, preventing me from shooting multiple targets at the same time, so you think outside the cage and try something else. Yeah, some puzzles are simpler than others, but even a light challenge to find the quickest way down before a trapdoor closes takes 5 times more thought than being blankly presented with a binary possibility space of a weak wall, grate, or panel. I am grateful for every puzzle that exists, and I put emphasis there for a reason, because the other bad news is when you find one, you got a decent chance of falling for Arkham City's cruelest trick.
Taped patient interview 1, Whitticus. Why don't you go ahead and start at the beginning?
I was in the sewers beneath a steel mill and...
It's okay, you can take your time.
Thank you. There was a puzzle chamber with a platform in the middle, so I went in, I stood on it, and the trophies opened up. So I thought, why not, right? That's gotta at least be worth some Reddit gold, so I took them.
Okay, and what happened next?
Look, bitches will say it was clearly a trap, but this is a video game. There'll be a way out. There'll be a secret. They're not just gonna kill you. They're not just gonna kill you. Doors shut, gas comes towards me, countdown, and I'm fucking dead. Frankly, I was ecstatic. This was a test of greed. There must have been a clue in the dialogue, and if I was just patient, if I grabbed the trophies in the right sequence, I would have walked. Not just Batman's intellect, but his willpower would play a part in puzzles for the first time.
So what's the problem?
Well, then I read the fucking tooltip. This death trap was designed to be impossible to solve. Come back when you have the right gear. They put the time in to develop something interesting, and they configured it in the most boring way possible. And then, of course, I dropkicked my nan, and now I'm here. Okay, thank you for your time. I swear to fucking God, I'd quit this fucking job. Fuckers keep coming in every day, telling me bullshit about Riddler trophies. Well, guess what, bitch? I'm through. Yeah, that's right. I'm putting in my 2 weeks. And then after that, I'm putting in my gun. I quit. The shadow of Asylum's Metroid failure lingers in City as an infection. Another exhibition is tucked away in the museum, where a gate is toggled by an invisible laser grid. It raises when you walk past, it lowers as soon as you exit. No way round, the sequencer is out of range, but we need a way through. Looks like a puzzle, huh? Time for some tests. Batarang. No dice. Backlaw. Equally few dice. But I do have an idea. If an RC Batarang trips the grid and leaving untrips it, then all it should take is throwing a Batarang from the inside to make it think I'm gone. There's no other word for it. I am simply a genius. Here goes. Nothing? Ah yes, I was wondering what would break first. Your coding or your internal logic. The gate should lower by its own rules, but Arkham City doesn't always play by the rules. The real solution is to buy the range amplifier for the Nintendo bitch and solve it by not solving it because there was no puzzle at all. Don't say I didn't warn you about the emotional stress. So, Riddler trophies. Many are great. Many are dull. Many of the dull pretend to be great, which I would have accepted if it was sold as the joke it is. Riddler, live streaming Batman humiliate himself and sending the VOD link to Joker. Overall, it's a step up, and so the final pillar of Arkham benefits in proportion. But speak of the devil, and we shall make him appear. Joker's time is up. Steel Mill, let's go. But don't think just because we're done with that tertiary side to gameplay that we're done with gadgets. A contradiction? No. A cure. For the worst of Asylum's diseases, the shallowness of its combat. Worst, because it's tough to operate on something so flawed without nicking the arteries of what made it legendary. The seamlessly spectacular animation and total player control of the free flow system is combat's founding pillar. Accessible. Freakishly intuitive. It made fights feel like movies and you feel like the director. Knocking thugs down with a single strike after reaching a combo of 3 enforced the rhythmic nature of successful combat. To maintain the flow of empowered visuals and empowered damage, your combo cannot be interrupted. If it is, you'll need to waste time and risk vulnerability to work your way back up to pace. A box was no big deal according to your health bar, but it was an interruption, and being harder to avoid than anything else. It was a greater threat than the knife man you always had your eyes on. That way, your control of the arena and prioritization of targets became doubly vital. They were its greatest source of depth, but that was also the problem, because target prioritization and arena control wasn't really expressed before late-game encounters with weapons, gun racks, boxes, and gas canisters. All too often was free flow left alone, where the poison of shallowness found it. It had the challenge of timing, but it lacked depth. For goal efficiency or simple self-expression, the best way to play was also the only way to play. Not something you could say of Spider-Man, Bayonetta, or Devil May Cry. It was unsustainable for a franchise. It was also worshipped. You could call that the tightrope, so don't amputate. Find an antidote. Relevant, balanced options. The definition of depth is a map to the solution. We're gonna need more options. The best thing gadgets have done for Arkham is play that part. First, by freeing Quickfire from the shackles of Asylum's upgrade system. Even if you knew a combat-applicable gadget's value, you'd still have to wait for the upgrade before it could make a difference. Now, you don't. Batarang. One knockdown, quickly. Bowlers. The same on a different hotkey, forcing you to overrule your instincts. Backclaw. One more painful knockdown, slowly, or one quick leap across the arena. It's your best and only option to disarm guns in open combat, but pick wisely, because enemies will quickly adapt. Whip. The same, but the knockdown is not optional and Catwoman does not move. Gel. One part setup, one part detonation, both parts vulnerable, but both unmatched in potential. Get the most bang for your buck. Caltrops. Limited ammo, area of effect. Position it right and it's a damageless gel, but with continuous effect. Don't spend them all at once. Freeze grenade. No damage, no knockdown. One target, who is taken out of the fight for 20 seconds. Electric charge. Small stun on a single target, but its counterbalance is what it can do to specific enemy types. Overloading a stun baton. Flailing Mr. Hammer. Per character, there is enough benefit-drawback balancing to deliver a sip of City's cure. Choices to make, ways to look cool. That's a confirmed dub, one of many, as we're about to see. Special combos. Special because they're just that strong, which is why you get only one for every combo of 8 or 5 upgraded. Arkham Asylum gave you a simple choice. Takedown could remove one target permanently. Throw could remove 2 temporarily. Your choice. Who's on the field? Who's most dangerous? A simple sort of depth. But alone. Players deserved a more thorough classer combo, and City was going to give it to him. Throw is removed to make way for balancing higher powers, and it begins with the Bat Swarm, a crowd control archetype where the crowd being controlled buys you valuable time. It does not make a ground pound and its equivalents easy, it makes them viable at any point in the encounter, instead of only when numbers have thinned near the end. Bat Swarm catalyzes an enrichment of the combat sandbox far beyond what meets the eye. Multi-takedown is an instant ground pound, or 2, or 3, or more, depending on your timing, but enemies recover quickly, so it is no easy window. The only reliable way to make it worthwhile is rapidly knocking down simple foes. If you get more ambitious, try to set up a more difficult enemy type. Odds are, everybody else has stood back up. That way, multi-takedown trims the trivial fat of an encounter, instead of sawing off the challenge. And disarm and destroy? It's a takedown, but for weapons instead of people. Why would you want to take down a weapon? We'll soon find out. What matters now is that it serves this function, giving us 4 relevant, balanced options, and 1 more dub on the scoreboard. How many more to go? The next step of their master plan concerns one of the easiest things to forget about Asylum. It had a stun. Why would you choose to stun? Good question. It was the only way to open up knife men for damage. On anyone else, you wouldn't. So either way, it wasn't much of a choice. It is now, because City gives the stun purpose with something else entirely, the beatdown. In Arkham, ground pounds trade a long period of vulnerability for an instant knockout. Make the time or correctly judge when you have it, and someone stays down for good. The beatdown is a standing reflection of the same idea, but with a quirk. It's interruptible. You can resume a beatdown, which means you can more often attempt them, which means the combat cycle regularly benefits from tests of awareness, greediness, and the variance that brings. Stuns are given purpose. Combat is given depth and variance. But who could foresee this would be a cornerstone of boss design too? Resumability means the game can demand beatdowns of any length it likes. How do you think we took out the Hammer Twin? How do you think we'll bring down the Titans? The shadow of Asylum made monster, and City as a sequel makes it something more. Gymshark's 100% natural bodybuilders won't go down to the old batarang and evade routine. In City, you stun. Then again, and for a third time it becomes an ultra stun, the longest knockdown in the game. It's outclassed in standard combat by the freeze grenade, but against a Titan, it acts as a standing reflection of the ground pound, without the quirk. Ultra stuns are not resumable. Make space, make time to open them up for a beatdown. Fulfill it and a mount begins. The Titan's full moveset is at your disposal. The charge is directional, the slam is radial AoE. There is as much room for optimization on the beast's back as there is in making the space to punch it. Their appearances are scarce to keep the restrictive attack options from becoming a problem, but the variety, spectacle, and mechanical wrench Titans throw into the works of a fight is a victory for Arkham City as a game and as a sequel. Our evaluation of combat is far from finished, but Joker is.
Why? Just leave me with him.
I said move!
This is all your fault! You've hounded him for years, beat him to a pulp, and for what? Why are you so mean?
Surprise!
You fell for the old fake Joker gag, Batman.
Batter up!
Nice transition, huh? Thank you. But I don't deserve the credit. Catwoman fits into Batman's story in all the most natural places. So natural, in fact, they also improve the game's pacing considerably instead of dragging it out or robbing it of time to breathe. It's almost as if those cutscenes were designed with a transition in mind. I don't believe Catwoman was an afterthought. She has her own movement system, and yet she was sold like an afterthought, like a pre-order bonus. For the past 10 years, you'd be hard-pressed to find a copy without Catwoman's story pack bundled in, so this might just be a surprise to you. But on release, you could have easily played this game gutted, fucked over to satisfy Warner Brothers' profit margin on a game that was guaranteed to sell millions. Catwoman shows us the other side of the story, in-game and out. Before shallowness sets in, her poison is Ivy. The king is, maybe, dead? Now we're going to meet the queen of Asylum's villains. A word of advice, don't say meet out loud when we get there. In another way, Selina shows us the other side of Rocksteady's approach to playable characters. Nightwing on his challenge maps and Robin in the epilogue included. A new animation set, 1 or 2 new special combos, and a reserved selection of gadgets that are usually minor twists on Batman's pre-existing set. Could this be the best way yet for Rocksteady to crank up their depth? Well, why don't we start with the obvious? Batman and Catwoman are not Nero and Dante. The free flow system is brilliant, but everything in Arkham is bound to it, and so bound to play in a fundamentally symmetrical style. It was not as suicidal as some may have thought for a co-op live service like Gotham Knights to walk away. Arkham is no live service. Its problem is more ironic: asymmetry. Or to be specific, the way Rocksteady handles upgrades. If every character shares the same core, but only Batman grows, then do Robin and Nightwing really vary combat with fewer gadgets, fewer abilities, and fewer special combos? Or do they simply present a neutered version of it? That question can be answered quite objectively. As Batman upgrades, Robin and Nightwing are left behind on their challenge maps, each contributing new options, new intrinsic value, but at the cost of half the total. They are brilliant novelties, but they are not what we're looking for. It's a good thing most of your time with Catwoman is early game, where Batman has most of the skill tree ahead of him, and a wise player will have bought shared upgrades. Like, for example, another candidate for expanded options. Free flow focus is what happens when you push your combo up to 12. You hit harder, but mostly you hit quicker. Increased speed can be the difference between a completed ground pound and failure. All the strikes of a beatdown, an interruption, or getting hit by an oncoming attack and zipping out of range in the nick of time. Your instincts are outdated. You're challenged to overrule them. Smart. In concept. The price of this power is special combos. If you spend one, focus disappears. So we have an ability that keeps you safe so long as you zip about like a pinball, and that simultaneously encourages you behave only as a pinball by disincentivizing the use of a major chunk of the sandbox, which, appropriately, has a knock-on effect. If you're only flying about, it's not just special combos you're not using. You're less likely to counter, to blade dodge, to interact with other enemy types. Aspects of the sandbox, the flesh of the depth, is stripped away, and the longer you keep it going, the more you miss. There is one choice between using combos or going for focus, but the costs mount up. 40 hits in focus is 8 special combos you never used, and so 8 choices you never made. Like dominoes, the combat system falls in this state. The final piece is the spectacle. What was the fantasy of Arkham again? Was it be the hockey puck? No, it was be the Batman. I'm not focused in, I'm taken out by a slapstick display. There are 2 solutions to this guilty verdict. One is just don't use it. Yep, sure won't. That's the point. If I did, it would ruin the game, which makes it useless. The other is the chance of parole, and I wish I could show you as Catwoman, but this is the proof icing atop the proof cake for my point about character inequality. Batman, much later on in our journey, can unlock free-flow focus gadgets, an upgrade that allows him to trade his focus for an empowered quickfire. 3 batarangs, chain lightning, a bigger bang. The problem is balance. A 5x freeze grenade sets a strong example. It's an exceptionally powerful attack, if you use it well. Freezing strong enemy types is worthwhile. Freezing weak enemy types is not. So if weak is more common than strong, and you want the maximum number of enemies frozen, its utility depends entirely on you. It would be overpowered if it were easy to meet its potential, but its depth balances its strength, making it worthy of a 12 combo investment. The Batclaw is also deep. The closer enemies are to the slam, the more get hit by the shockwave, but the closer they are, the greater the risk to you. Perfect timing is rewarded. Trouble is, it's just not rewarded very well. I blew a 12 combo for a gust of wind? Batarang, meanwhile, is unpredictable, and only a split second faster than what you could achieve without the empowerment, while Electric Charge is a worse bat swarm, at double the price. Yeah, that makes sense. Which leaves us with Explosive Gel. On the other extreme, a challenging setup, a nuclear payoff. So nuclear, in fact, that it's unquestionably the most powerful attack in the entire game. But that potentially devastating imbalance never actually mattered. Why? No one ever actually used it. One, because Free Flow Focus Gadgets requires the base Free Flow Focus upgrade, which you might have never bought. Two, because until the end, everything else on the tree seems like a much safer choice. The premise alone of enhanced gadgets in one specific situation gives you no measure of its actual utility, power, or its busted-ass balancing. I'd rather have more armor. By the time most get the upgrade, there's not enough game left to get familiar. Free Flow Focus Gadgets, executed properly, could have saved focus for Batman, but it was flimsy and buried by an upgrade screen. Court adjourned. Next defendant stands accused of murder with a lethal weapon. This woman's barking mad, and the jury's still out on how the fuck being half-tree lets her fire glowing laser bombs. A microcosm of her boss fight in Asylum, Clammy Pammy interrupts standard combat against her legion of simps with a barrage of inexplicable spores. Like throwable objects elsewhere, this puts a tense pressure on awareness, but the fight is over quickly. After emerging from a hedge, Ivy immediately starts hanging someone. If she worked for Melvin Capital in January, that might have been herself. But alas, Catwoman is once again suspended upside down. According to Zack Snyder, pruning hedges while holding Catwoman's legs up is Batman's job, but he's busy getting injected with Jokeronavirus. You may have also noticed that I'm not taking our situation very seriously, but to be fair, neither is the game. Gwyneth Paltrow is not in the mood for forgiveness. Selena forgot to water her orchids. They died in agony. Are you all kidding me? Ivy's character in Arkham City is motivated by a potted plant. Where the shadow of Titan grows strong in City, Ivy is pruned down to comic relief, wilted to a shadow of her former self.
Everyone will pay.
Disappointing for a character of such weight, but also uncomfortable for its breach in tone. Arkham has never been humorless, but it's never been directed by the absurd. This is Rocksteady's Fat Thor. Sorry, Ivy, but the clown shoes are filled. Well, there's nothing else to say. We're stuck. Looks like Batman's going to be finishing the combat analysis.
Get back here, Harley.
But I want to know who he is, sweetie.
No one's who you think they are, my dear. Why spoil the fun?
It was all a lie. There's nothing wrong with you.
Nice of you to say, but you of all people should know there's plenty wrong with me. Take my blood, for example. I wish somebody would. This stuff is killing me.
Why should I care?
Because now there's a teeny little bit of me in you too, Bats. Oh, come on. Don't tell me it's not what you've always wanted. Look, we're running out of time. I need your help. I nearly had a cure. It was so close, and then it was taken from me.
So we both die. I'm fine with that.
Are you? Imagine sucking down that last breath knowing that Gotham is doing the same.
What are you talking about?
Oh, didn't I say? I've spent weeks shipping samples of my blood to emergency rooms all over the city.
So that's Protocol 10. Poison Gotham. I expected more.
Protocol 10? Never heard of it. Hold tight. I'll be in touch!
Bitch! At least we got a free iPhone. Guess he prefers Android. Before we dive back into combat, I'll bring you up to speed. Batman has hours left to live. Joker has fewer. Their fates are tied. A premise worthy of a game this ambitious, so Rocksteady believed. They advertised the idea of two arch-nemeses being forced to work together. But if you're struggling to recall a time when that actually happened, your memory's just fine. Because the only time Joker directly cooperates with Batman is now, when we're pointed in the direction of the geezer with a freezer, who isn't even there. Penguin's taken him, and just like Freeze, this is where Joker's role in our meandering quest for the cure will disappear. But if Bilbo Blizzard is with Penguin, then we're going to the Natural History Museum. Maybe we'll find the creation engine in here. Psych, bitch. Thought you were going to the museum? Just as outraged with the cryptographic sequencer as I am, Penguin has blocked its signal, so it's on us to find and destroy the jammers. But we do get to see an exhibit to something. Asylum's Knifeman is a fossil. When he attacks, you stun or evade. Not exactly a compelling choice, not exactly a compelling fight, but City is not bound to the binary of the blade, because here, they are the first step in Rocksteady's ambition to evolve the counter. A yellow flare robs Batman of the upper hand, forcing you to hold the counter button and pull away. Like multi-counters, the second step, the visual composition of the fight is given variance and believability, less gamified, more visceral. Multi-counter expects little of you, a double or triple tap, and rewards much, 2 or 3 knockdowns. Blade dodge is not quite so simple. Gain your confidence with it, and you might just wonder, why you ever bothered? I blade dodge, I take no damage. I evade, I take no damage. It's quicker, and I get to reposition. Not a difficult choice. Blade dodge takedown balances things back into place. Divide the hold into 3 timed inputs, and you'll take the wielder out for good. Well, he'll live, probably. Big challenge, big payoff, and the counter is evolved. But knives are only a part of a bigger picture. You see, Asylum's Knifeman never really left. Down in the subway with the final jammer, it looks a little different. The sword has become a shield. Stun them for an aerial attack or evade. A functionally identical binary, and a relatively uninteresting challenge were it in Asylum. Here, they flourish because they exist on the trend of Arkham City's weapons and its complex domino of effects. But I'd characterize the explanation as a different game, chess. The magnum opus of enemy design. Millions of relevant, balanced options made from the agreed-upon strengths and weaknesses of a few carvings of wood. It's no surprise modern devs have been known to take direct inspiration, but even those who don't, design in a similar fashion by keeping enemy type immutable. Role is genetic, they can never change. Arkham City is more like chess's one exception, because in Arkham City, enemy type is not determined by wielder, but by the weapon itself. Weapons are everywhere, from bats to blades to batons to boxes, and weapons can be dropped, exchanged, picked up, like a pawn reaching the other side of the board and becoming a queen. Just like chess, the ability of the depth and challenge to self-regenerate can keep a fight interesting down to the very last pawn and the very last punch. And just like chess, there is a distinct depth in keeping that from happening. Stop the pawn before it gets there. Stop the thug before he picks up a shield. Where in the genetic vacuum of Asylum this binary archetype would be uninteresting, in City, preventing it and every other enemy type from existing feeds into the depth of arena control and prioritizing your target. You can physically prevent the attempt. You can snip the bud from afar. You can make a trade-off choice and use that very special combo. The self-regeneration of enemy type through weapons, and the pressure that puts on the player has underpinned enemy design in every subsequent Arkham, with some understandable exceptions, and others not so understandable. With 9 fists jammed into 3 jammers, we're left with 1 place to go and 1 exceptional enemy that proves the rule. Alright, mate. What? It's not him, that's just Jeff. Right, you pieces of shit. That is the Armored Thug, a fully genetic archetype. Trick is, stun and keep up a highly extended beatdown to finish him instantly. They are otherwise invulnerable and will end your combo if you even try. Another binary then, and with no transferability to save it. But that's not the biggest problem here, because their one weakness is special combo takedown. Uh-oh. Why then would you waste your time on an EFAP length beatdown if you could take him out when your combo counter hits 5? Not exactly a balanced set of options, and as it robs you of choices in the fight against him, it also robs you of choosing who to special combo and which to use, because the armored thug is always the best choice. He can be a novel wrench in the works of an encounter, but what if he were a weapon instead? What if, say, an armored vest and helmet were transferable, and where a special combo only takes out the bearer, a full beatdown destroys the suit for good? You'd fix the problem and deepen the encounter. The flaws of the exception might just prove the virtues of the rule. And for the final trick, I think it's time to let you in on a secret. I lied. By omission. If you electric charge the armor, they'll go flying, and the sheer force will knock down nearby enemies like bowling pins if you aim a little smartly. Expands the depth, wouldn't you say? Makes them less dull? Consider it my present to you, a show of appreciation for watching my video, because for reasons beyond human comprehension, Rocksteady keep it to themselves. That is why my point stands, but you can thank me later. And not just for that. Did you know you could electrocute shield bearers too? You can backclaw Mr. Hammer. You can redirect aerial attacks to leap across the map and dodge incoming projectiles. You can disarm and destroy throwable objects. And one for luck, there's an exclusive animation if you redirect onto an Ambravici twin. The first 4 of those add significant depth, and half the people who consider themselves Arkham vets won't have known all 5. It is the hidden cherry on top of a hearty cake. Thankfully, it's quite a cake, even without its classified cherry, where tangs of bitter accent torrents of sweet. Arkham City looks better than great, and plays better than anyone could have dreamed following Asylum. I mastered Asylum in 2 days. I'm still getting better at City, today. And this is where systems, levels, and mechanics come to an end. Man, been one hell of a journey. But remember back to why we made it. Because this is a review, that's true, but also to find some answers. Could City move mountains to fix and best Asylum, but be its own game too, not stuck in the shadow of Titanic success? Could City be City, and also be Arkham? Is there any doubt to the answer? From a new form of predator to fully integrating the utility belt into combat. From a prison island to a prison city, a journey made on the sacrifice of nothing. From interrogations to puzzles to giving every chess piece the potential of the pawn. And what could be more Batman than closing his wings to dive? City is a victory as a sequel, as an Arkham, and as itself. So now comes the second question we came all this way to answer. Was it enough to make it a masterpiece? Of course, we've not seen everything the game has to offer, but we have seen the most measurable and significant parts of it, and I'm not even willing to give you an inch of the answer to that. To understand why, we ought to begin by catching up on the story so far, but even so, you might not predict the nature of this caveat until I say it at the end. For now, the reason I gave you such a good look at Batman's journey in Act 2, don't you think he lost a little agency? He's less of a bat, more of a bunny, because we are of course following a carrot on a stick. Where Act 1 is mystery-driven, Act 2 is cure-driven, and perhaps you've already seen a problem, but perhaps you didn't need to, because there is no more widely held complaint with Arkham City than the cure. Ironically, a misdiagnosis. The cure, really, is the loudest symptom of a carrot-shaped disease. Act 2's miserable, multifaceted failure to plot itself out compellingly. Only one facet of which is inherent, that the cure and the fight to get it could have happened anywhere, as in not in Arkham City, not related to Hugo Strange or Protocol 10, as in the premise of the game, and Batman's motivation for being here is shoved aside while his role is reduced from a detective to a rabbit, forcibly chasing a hit of the magic G-Fuel. The main desire line and prime mysteries aren't complemented, they're consumed, only to return again in the final hours. Such a meaningless defiance of story structure has a simple and inevitable effect. Frustration.
Protocol 10? Never heard of it.
The rest of Act 2's carrot problems are not in planning, but in execution, like for instance the structure of the hoops we're made to jump through. As we've seen, to find Freeze, who we at this point have no investment in, one dead end in the GCPD moves on to another in the museum entrance. Our destination is dangled in front of us, but we're instead sent backwards to disable a series of 3 jammers. The first 2 are over in minutes. The third brings us through a wonderful new level. It's not padding, but it feels that way, both taking the form of the decades-old collection collect 3 parts of the sacred key routine, and being a cold, unemotional logistical problem excising both intrigue and drama. 3 jammers do not feel like sacred keys, and this door does not feel like the Temple of Time. It's not a fixture of the wild, it's a temporary checkpoint, erected just to piss you off. And all it'd take to sweep this clutter of problems off the table is a better excuse, a minor restructure. The problem is replicated inside. To find Freeze, who we still have no investment in, there's a torrential bout of meatheads to wade through before arriving at the Chamber of Secrets, where you go east to free Cops, then west to free Freeze, then east to free his suit, then north to free Penguin from consciousness, and this assumes we go the right way every time. But anyway, it will feel just as contrived. And when all is said and done, ah, shucks. Sorry, Batman, you haven't got a binding enzyme. Can't have a cure without the binding enzyme, but I tell you what, I heard the boss of the next level has one. Off you go now. There's a good lad. Even a game whose distribution is so focused on its non-script content, and so whose plot is ultimately a series of excuses to go from one level to the next, should probably avoid making that fact quite so obvious. Feeling like the story is moving, that what you're doing matters, is a big deal, and Arkham has only gotten worse at it as time has gone by. Didn't they get the memo? Arkham City's Act 2 feels a little like being backed up in a daisy chain of email verifications, hoping you eventually find the one that just lets you log in. But that, I'm afraid, is only the tip of the iceberg lounge. This problem is defined by its cure. A plot device, not like the mysteries of Protocol 10 or Joker's health that motivate Act 1. All there is to know is that it will cure our disease. Intrigue is lost. If it cannot be interesting, how will it compel? Until its scarcity in Act 3, it will not. And in the first and most fundamental way, it will not because the disease won't either, and diseases motivate cures. Unlike Night, which we knew would bring Arkham to an end, and threatened Batman's life with believable ceremony twice, City was part 2 of the first critically acclaimed superhero game franchise in history, and what supposedly threatens the life of the icon of human fortitude, a man who can bat aside the League of Shadows, came as a result of being jumped by a clown. Lacking reason, lacking ceremony, the threat feels idle. We knew this before any sequel was announced, and despite the game's insistence to the contrary, the best City manages is a few scripted stumbles, Batman's blackening facial veins and reminders over the radio.
Your face.
You do realize that you will actually die if you don't get this cure soon.
Thanks for reminding me, Alfred.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me, Alfred. Not much point though, I'll promptly forget. This is Paul Dini's Batman, perhaps gone too far. Where Bale's suffering was painted on his face, Arkham City's is stoic to the point he's almost more statue than man. It's hard to care for statue cancer. Harder still because unlike Knight's infection, the disease has no effect in gameplay either. But even doubting a disease's lethality doesn't have to kill the stakes, because a poor excuse can still generate strong conflict. As the hundreds of similar superhero plots prove, it is in other threatened lives, difficult choices, desperate battles, and meaningful character explorations that a time limit and the scarce ability to remove it could succeed. In their final moments, people show you who they really are. Joker spoke the writer's truth, and that is another memo Rocksteady did not get. There are only 2 active participants in the race to find the cure, and Batman is Joker's plan, which means until it is finally manufactured, there is actually only 1 active participant. Fates do not feel like they're being juggled. There's no tension because there's no real element of competition. All stakes are funneled through Batman, and Batman doesn't care and isn't going to die. Infected transfusion clinics in Gotham and Bloodhaven are a desperate attempt to claw back something to fight for, but purely referential public stakes are worth nothing. We don't bond with undefined groups who only appear to us conceptually. If that's true in real life, it's certainly true in a video game. Meaningful character interactions, on the other hand, all we get is sickly thin. Let's take a closer look. To get the binding enzyme, Batman tracks an escaped League assassin to wherever he can find Ra's al Ghul's blood. Unsurprisingly, that'll be inside Ra's al Ghul. The track becomes a chase, the chase becomes a fight, the fight becomes an L, so Batman can slip a GPS onto her back. But it's all okay, because Robin arrives to commit misogyny. He also wears a hood and doesn't afraid of anything. But I can't tell if the hood's part of making the cringe boy wonder fit the based Arkham Gritverse, or to cover up the fact that he is also bald. During his 2 seconds of screen time, Robin offers help Batman could probably use. He declines. One perspective says Batman truly believes the hospitals need Robin more than Arkham City, but another perspective says Batman won't let anyone see him weak or in need of help. The chance of an interesting character beat is better than nothing. If you wanted something more substantial, then it's time to find that assassin. Peel back the concrete skin of Arkham City. Follow the stacked ruins of Gotham's past, down to its deepest root, down to Gotham's heart and down to Batman's. Talia al Ghul. City's borderline Tarantino use of subtext in dialogue moves mountains of exposition in seconds. From Oracle's reluctance to let us visit Talia, we know she means everything to Batman, and he might get stupid for her.
After that night we spent in Metropolis, you could have just called.
I'm not here for you.
We learn she and Raish want Batman to lead the assassins, but to do so he must best the mythical demon trials and as his final challenge, take another life. We know the only way to get to Raish and his blood is to say yes. Conflict set. But Arkham City quickly sidesteps having to deal with Batman's no-killing rule. He breaks the stakes by breaking Raish, no sacrifice needed. The real drama is in the lie. Talia is outraged when Batman reveals his true intentions, and Batman shows genuine regret.
Talia,
Don't! You two deserve each other.
Smooth moves, man. I'm sure she'll come round. Hey, I think that was his very first emotion. Baby steps. But that wasn't just the height of cure-related drama in Act 2. It, alongside one scene that could be interpreted in our favor, is everything. For the innumerable events it connects, the Cure is a hopelessly weak plot device. It's an intangible artifact with no interesting properties other than removing our equally intangible disease. And with Act 2's plotting sentenced to life in prison, we come to a dilemma. The dilemma that forced us to delay our conclusion. The reason why is in the beginning. Arkham Asylum's structure was a failure. Its stealth was catastrophically imbalanced. Its combat was shallow, its gadgets were a chore, and its plot was broken. Arkham Asylum was not a masterpiece, and yet they say so. And even with all these problems, my take wasn't far off. Asylum isn't bad, it's not even decent. It's fantastic. That's an opinion formed in 2020. After all that, how can it still be a great game? What saved Asylum? Well, riddle me this. We've witnessed Rocksteady patch up Asylum's holes and then some. Was it enough to make a masterpiece? The combat is world class. The stealth? It's good, but not quite. The gadgets aren't bad, but they certainly aren't great. And the plot? Yeah. Yet, they say City is a masterpiece. Well, that's not strictly true. They don't say it, they scream it. I could fill another 5 minutes of video just reciting the awards Arkham City won. It is listed as among the greatest games of all time, and this time, I agree. What saved Asylum is what uplifts City. But if you want to understand what, the smart place to start is figuring out why we're unsure 10 years on. Why do we even have to ask? It's not because they've been kept secret. Look at it this way. The most important part of Arkham's Be the Batman fantasy is that you don't jog or run when you move. You reflect Batman's confidence by default. The most important balancing mechanic isn't the smoke bomb, but it is the automatic prompt upon detection. Small trees can be easy to lose amongst the forest, but on the other extreme, a particularly remarkable tree might just distract you from the forest around it. Don't we often laser in on the interesting, overlooking the important? Isn't it easy to miss the pattern for that outstanding moment, or that stellar performance that didn't actually matter quite so much? Some forests are just as easily missed for the trees, whether it's a needle or the haystack. It's easy to overlook the things that don't draw attention to themselves, and that explains a lot, but it is not the whole story. No, our situation grows more difficult still, because even the things that do draw attention can be difficult to actually talk about. Games are young, complex, and lack widely shared, rigid definition. There is a reason one platformer feels smooth and another feels clunky, but we often lack the means to find or communicate it. For many, myself included, game feel might as well be magic, and so our capacity to discuss it may not be equal to its importance. City is uplifted by the same forces that saved Asylum. I'm not saying they're secret, but that they might be harder to see, to respect, and to define. Whether they stand in plain sight or lurk behind the curtains, a better picture of Arkham's quality has eluded us for far too long. In the first video, we scratched the surface. Tonight, we're going to put a Harvey dent in this bulwark. So as we continue reviewing the minutiae of Arkham City, we're going to focus on a search for broader, but more rarely explored patterns in the game's quality. And we're going to start with the curtains themselves. Because speaking of a broken plot, here's a twist. I like the story of Act 2. I also like Arkham Asylum's story. Why? Popular belief puts it above Nights, but reality says there isn't much to like. It was empty of three-dimensional character, empty of meaning, of themes. Its plot was as basic as it could be. Its mysteries were solved by Oracle Googling the answers. Its script was so skinny, how could it hold a candle to night? And yet, that's not good enough, because people believe it. And those people watching this video right now are probably thinking, yeah, but what? But what? There is a bedrock to Arkham's story, something that supports it, and everything we're going to cover from this point on affects Arkham's story in some way, but the first step in our journey affects it only. Arguably, it is story. The definition is hazy, and the key question is this: what did Asylum and City have that Night couldn't match? There is a big picture, and it is rife with nuances, but it begins with a type of atmosphere, and so we will start with what makes that tick. Take a listen. The faint howl of wind. The groan of stressed metal. The distant repetitions of a PA system. Rocksteady's sound design is as tight as their graphics. If they can imagine it, they can bring it to life. But of course, that just removes a bottleneck. What did they imagine? Why? Cobwebs and faint light detail the high ceiling, where suspended pterodactyls swing above Jeff's head. The terrors of the deep, advertised by a tattered cloth loosely clinging to the walls aside. Yes, you can ride the pterodactyls. Yes, you can jump on Jeff's head. He, a shark, and your mum, according to Call of Duty lobbies, are rendered in stained glass in the entry. Below, we see scattered books, shattered tiling, punctured glass, faded paintings, chairs and toys in disarray, and a blinking light above a rack of skulls. A bounty of beautiful detail. Of that there is no question, but beauty is one thing. Why does this place hit so fucking hard every time? Well, my girlfriend often tells me, as I cry into my pillow, that it's not all about the scale of detail, it's about how you use it. How do you use it? Think cooperatively. Broken, drowned, scattered, dead, twisted, massive, holy. This is all hitting the same notes, and they're not random notes. They're the notes of a chord. Death and aboveness. The Museum of Fossils is itself a fossil. Gothic arches bleeding a cold blue, and unlike my girlfriend, satisfyingly filled with white light. Corpse silhouettes made to dance by the currents they drowned in. An overbearing kraken, a vast bust of Poseidon, a thin layer of ice above the shark-infested depths, in a chamber made from a thalassophobic's nightmares. The sound of waves penetrate the adjoining hallways, the imagery of storms with skeletons and sharks in cages. Claustrophobia is balanced with high ceilings as you'd find in any religious building attempting to make you feel small and something else feel big. Terrors of the deep, it said. The art nor the sound nor the music would let me forget. Harmony. You need only look at Simon Stagg's airship for what happens without it. Stagg is a disharmonious mess of white, curved, deeply generic high-tech gizmos, and I say mess emphatically. Crazed layouts, nonsensical construction. These things work for the mad gothic style Rocksteady mastered with Asylum. They just make Stagg's realistic high-tech lab look gamified. The museum affects me. This does not. But the difference runs deeper than we know. Terrors of the deep. The art, nor the sound, nor the music would let me forget. Not even the gameplay. Just beneath the kraken, if the ice starts cracking, the shark starts snacking on everything you're packing. But with some attacking and just a little hacking, you'll give Penguin a jolly good smacking. Atmosphere is made of harmony. Work in the game itself, and it becomes something more. You can't assign a number to that something. It's too complex, but it's not really magic. It has consistencies and patterns, just like we've seen, and you can describe it with more than just numbers. Like this. Creeping through crevices, from vents to ruined passages and a gaping underbelly, Arkham Asylum was chokingly claustrophobic. It made you feel small, in the face of something larger, as did the moon that ate the sky, the holy gothic architecture, and the deep mythic colors all of it was drenched in. You are small, something else is large. Harmony. Even the pacing played its part. As we plunged into the night, the threats of Asylum relentlessly evolved and attacked relentlessly, both inside and out, creating a sense of danger, of smallness, of a lack of control. My argument is that harmony, of atmosphere, and the interactive experience itself is a major reason why a script as thin and pitiful as Asylum's can be mistaken for a good story. It's the first half of Arkham's narrative bedrock. And do you doubt we ought to call it story? The telling of events. That story. If a world can do it, and it certainly can, then a world can tell story. But keep out smeared on a wall is not the bigger picture. Any form of interactivity tells events by nature. So then, could you not consider yourself the reader, and the level the page? Yourself the protagonist, and the level the plot? The uncertainty of your choices makes specificity impossible, but what if a developer could nevertheless sculpt the world and the encounters within it to say, in broad strokes, what they want it to say? Well then, you'd have the Outer Wilds' heart. You'd have Zelda or Dark Souls. Then you'd have what Asylum had, and City did too, that Night never quite managed to match. Then you'd know why, in absence of a specialized word, we default to calling it story. This is the bigger picture. This is partly what confuses when Asylum's admirers have to reconcile their love of its story with central characters as hollow as Dr. fucking Young, and mysteries solved on Skype. It's not unimportant, intangible, or immeasurable. It is not the second script, but it is something real and something narrative. Act 2's script is hollow. Its one valuable character interaction crumbles under the weight of how much it needs to support. What is said about why I must do what I do, what contrived excuses the plot can conjure from the cure to Jammers to Freeze's suit, are weak and frustrating. But I wasn't sad to do it. I was happy. Because of the things that were never said, that simply are. Because of the step above atmosphere. We viewed an exhibit in the museum. We've gone back to the mythic madhouse. But now it's time to climb to the peak of Rocksteady's wordless design, in the buried underworld between you and Raish's blood. The second level of Act 2, where I hope to dispel any surviving doubt. Let's get you acquainted.
This world is doomed.
Wonder City is the response, an ancient stronghold powered by an impossible technology to weather the lashings of fate its inhabitants knew awaited humanity, and their wonders struggle on, groaning blood through rusted metal arteries, to forever cycle the announcer's twisted fanfare.
Cities like Gotham will grow to resemble hell breaking through the sidewalk, continuing up into the sky.
So gleeful in the promise of their salvation, and with one monumental exception, the enlightened fanatics built their opulent temple without aspirations to the clouds. Butcher, barber, tailor, witch.
Structures will grow to blot out the sun, and the people who live in them will be choked by the pollution they create.
But Gotham stands, if only for a time, and Wonder City is smothered by the concrete scab of the world above. The freakish jumble of history is pressed into the seams of a caging megastructure to keep the weight from burying them.
Eventually, when no space remains, this world will die, struggling for breath as man's mistakes nail the coffin shut.
But this didn't have to be their fate.
There is a better way.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow us to present to you the future.
Wonder City.
Have you ever seen anything like it? Besides the un-London SCP, it's doubtful. You see, Rocksteady was scared. The mythic core of all Batman stories allows artists to take atmosphere to an extreme, but put your hands up if you've seen a green, blue, and orange level in a video game before. Okay, that's 100% of the human population. So their first move in wordless narrative was being unpredictable, creative, new, and it is impossible not to pay attention because of it. You've seen blue, but not a blue Gothic natural history museum awakening primal fears of the ocean. And you've seen the fire level, but probably not the half factory, half funhouse fire level. You've seen green, but you ain't seen Wonder City. And down here, that unfamiliarity enhances a deeper layer of mystery. The irony of the world-fair city is that all they foretold happened to them, because the consistency in its design is as you may have felt. The harmony of disharmony, patterns and their corruptions, the implication of a sinister unknown, like a skull without eyes, key to the art of horror and to the art of mystery. Take a familiar time period, craze its construction and meld it with something alien, technology they shouldn't have. Where did it come from? What did they find? Cancel posters litter the streets, but how could Joker have said the N-word on stream 200 years ago? What went wrong? They were thriving. They were great. Now they're all gone. They're all dead. I'd be dead too if I gave birth to a Riddler trophy, but everybody else? Who was left to write those warnings? The occult sits among butchers and tailors, the pattern and its corruption. Barbarism smeared and hung from greatness, the pattern and its corruption. Ooh, alcohol. And where humanity beyond the walls, so they believed, was damned, these people fanatically celebrated their own salvation, the wonder of survival, and now it is filled with death. These are the contrasts of Wonder City that give us mystery and tension. But beyond these sinister touches, Wonder City has simpler tricks to summon suspense. Tight passages, vast chasms, claustrophobia, vertigo. Nowhere feels safe. Unsure structural integrity is amplified by the sound design and the slightly crooked level of the rotting floors you walk upon. But it's not just what you see, it's how you see it. A sense of decay, and also a sense of madness, comes from the slowly twisting POV applied to your camera the moment you step into Wonder City. And it's not just how you see it, it's how they see you. The still working eyes of the inexplicable clockwork guardians plant a seed into your mind. Will they pounce? No. But they will. An ambush from the assassins is unpredictable for the player, if not for Batman. Wonder City is a masterclass in ruins. Oh, Act 2 may be a Cure-driven plot, but the Cure did not excitedly drive me through the green grit gaslight underworld, worthy of the Rapture and Unlondon. Wondering about the city did, if only for 30 minutes, in the bowels of Arkham City. A game not famed or remembered for any environmental quality, but this was worth more than just about everything on the script until now. It didn't even need words to build on its characters. Check this out. Once great, Wonder City is ancient and crazed, kept alive only by the heartbeat of Lazarus pulsing through its veins. Now here's the cool bit. Am I really describing Wonder City, or am I describing Ra's al Ghul, its king? The steel mill isn't just the orange level, it's heat and steam and being surrounded by 1,000 memorable ways to die. Its harshness, a fiery one to contrast against the cold outside. It's the flame of Joker's chaos fighting harder than ever to stay alive. And the city? Strange, wouldn't you say? A decaying bouquet of spotlights in disarray, a brutalist enclosure, grey and inhumane. Oh, you're being watched, but you're a rat, and no one really cares. That's dehumanization. That's strange. One of many strange things about Arkham City, but now you see the way wordless narrative connects you closer to characters who may be absent or thin in any conventional sense. When the script fails, City never falls, just like Asylum never fell. They thrive on a bedrock, whose first part of 2 is the nebulous realm of wordless narrative experience that video games are so especially capable of exploring. Fueled by that tenacious creativity, we are immersed in rich, characterized, unpredictable, and mechanically harmonized worlds. Consider for a moment that during its campaign, Arkham City isn't really an open world game. It's a Dungeons and Caverns game, more like Zelda than Assassin's Creed. But Arkham Knight's commitment to its vast next-gen Gotham resulted in a campaign that rarely lets us leave. It's stuck with Gotham's problems, incapable of consistently varying or intensifying itself elsewhere, as its counterparts could. Knight gave us stakes, themes, a decent plot, and deeper characters than any Arkham ever had. By popular vote, it's the worst in the series. Interesting, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present to you the future of your sex life. A few months ago, the official Whitelight pinup girl t-shirt dropped, and suffice it to say, Wall Street's market analysts wore the expression on the shirt, and then they wore the shirt, and then I woke up. But today, lightning is going to strike twice with the world's first strand-type drip. Find your Princess Beach with the irresistible allure of 3 cryptic numbers. You and I know what they mean, but if the blue-pilled sheep'll ask, just make something up. They won't care. They'll be hypnotized by your fit. So, go to whitelight.store and begin the next chapter of your life. Oh, take me down to the Arkham City where the girls are green and the grass is pretty. Won't you please let me go? With our first pillar identified and the cure almost ready, the place to be now is the city the campaign doesn't need, exploring the fascinating nuances in the way it handles immersion, the many ways it boils of life and is drained of it, so that we might add to our understanding of the first forest and find the starting thread of the second. We all know Arkham City is bleeding with atmosphere, but what about Arkham City? From a distance, the lines between Gotham and the prison are blurred. It all seems to rise from a grey pit in one chaotic crescendo of status and repair. We're a part of that golden city, but like a snake shedding its skin, we're the gutter. And like Wonder Tower, we are so very far beneath it. A powerful perspective, one of many. In Arkham Knight, you are either blitzing past the details at 200 miles per hour or soaring above them with your juiced-up grapnel boost. But you are amongst Arkham City, a needle in an architectural haystack, not above it or confined to the roads. In City, you can see the details. You'll soak them in. You'll want to. The freakish clutter of metal giants, graffiti, fire, and clowns. Thomas the Wank Engine, the disarray, the trash, the signs, the lights, windows smashed, barred, or burning. Sometimes I wish we could see what it's like inside the Husk City, that we could just see out those windows. Other times, I prefer to just imagine it. The further east you go, the more the bay gnaws at the city's foundations. Its architectural Jenga buckles, and as the streetlights of Gotham's past protrude from the depths, the rooflines above sit crooked, adding one more layer to Arkham City's chaos. The sunken city beneath the waterline is another world we'll just have to imagine, but explore the wounds with a freeze raft, and it is literally immersive. It's also not the only thing that changes as you move through the city. The skyboxes shift palette, from a green bay beneath a firelit haze of smoke in the industrial district, to a gold skyline beneath grey. From the perspectives of belowness to the myriad notes of chaos and decay, Arkham City harmonizes to a powerful effect. It's a beautiful mess, but for everything it gets right, my concession is this. It's powerful, more than most overworlds will ever be, but there are things that hold it back. It can even feel a little muted, relative to Arkham City's other levels, and to other overworlds in this franchise. Color is emotion, color is character, color evades normalization, but even with a stylish sky and neon signs doing their best to break up the monotone moonlight, City comes across like a pencil sketch of Asylum, the concrete and ruins like the green of overgrowth. No vibrant madness seeps down from our dummy thick moon. The sky is simply blank. In the same muted comparison, Gothic buildings chaotically click together in just the asymmetrical jumble of Asylum, but they lack any and all grandeur. They're just mildly Gothic buildings, and in the absence of Asylum's power, there are times City's dirt is just dirty, the ruins just grey. It's an atmosphere every fan of atmosphere should experience, but it is weak in the shadow of Asylum. A good thing then. Arkham City has a trick up its sleeve that no other Arkham ever did, or ever would. It's a sort of glue that sticks you in and sticks the world itself together. Unparalleled cohesion. By which I mean, Arkham City is an internally consistent organism. It feels alive and immersive in the same way Metro does, because it reacts to itself, it acknowledges itself, and it all feels cohesive. Let me show you how, and then let me show you why. Batman and Catwoman, the city doesn't sleep for them. We are not the only characters in this story, and we are not the only ones who want Arkham City under control. 3 generals, 3 armies, an ever-evolving struggle for territory. It is all around you. When Joker committed ableism on Batman, Penguin's thugs had closed in on the steel mill. Lookouts near the Olympus brag about how good it feels to be on the winning team, and the crew they're covering below have Joker's loyalists prisoner on the bridge. The GCPD is in Penguin's grasp, but he's not stupid. He expects resistance, which is why when we left to get Freeze, Penguin blew the bridge connecting the steel mill to the city. Movement is meaningfully altered, and Joker's legs are cut off. But despite the ongoing effects of GamerSup's withdrawal, he isn't stupid either. An underground detachment would receive weapons from Strange and take the subway back from Penguin. Their still warm bodies decorate the platforms as we return to the surface from Wonder City, where things aren't much better for Penguin. Joker's overground forces, now separated from the steel mill, were already positioned to take the courthouse from Dent. While they rounded up the unaffiliated, his absent guard waited for an opportunity above. And it came when we toppled Cobblepot. With the boss gone, Club Penguin's defense won't hold for long, despite a guard's insistence that they're locked down tighter than his mother on prom night.
What the hell does that mean?
You don't want to know.
Yeah, I do. Me too.
We've got more important things to be dealing with, like, what are we gonna do if Batman's taken down the Penguin?
Maybe we could go see your mother.
Don't even go there.
I think we touched a raw nerve there. What's the deal? Is your mommy the town bike?
No.
I bet she is.
If you must know, on her prom night she got a little drunk.
I told you.
She got a little drunk and killed her classmates. Butchered them all with a potato peeler.
What?
So on prom night, we try to make sure she's tied down. You happy?
I guess.
It's going down, Penguin!
Anyone who ever spent a second with Arkham knows the value of thug dialogue, the hundreds of pages of conversations written and recorded for your enemies as you fly overhead. They talk recent events, their beliefs, their stories, their fear, and their affected overconfidence in response to that fear, which of course you'll take as an invitation to prove foolish. City takes Asylum's brilliant idea of henchmen reacting to the state of affairs and expands the underlying philosophy into a world you could believe existed without the player. These ideas are never stronger in Arkham than they are in City, closer, remarkably, to the immersive sim than the world of Arkham Knight. Why? For the same reason the immersive sim can do what it does, because Night is big and City is so very small. In an age of Witcher 3s, Spider-Man PS4s and Assassin's Creeds literally called Odyssey, Arkham's brevity can be a shock. Cut the lollygagging, and Arkham Asylum is 8 hours long. Arkham City, 8.5. Its best side quests last 5 minutes. Its map is nearly 3 times smaller than the smallest Assassin's Creed, and is only 100 square meters bigger than Ocarina of Time. These games are exceedingly dense. Even Arkham Knight, the next-gen open-world experience, is microscopic among its peers, to the sacrifice of its own believability. And yet this limbo of big yet small gained it nothing. Commitment to small gave Arkham City superpowers. On a fraction of the budget and a fraction of the time, Arkham City could handcraft a comprehensive turf war, where larger games can only compete if they design their worlds for dynamic AI systems, like Watch Dogs 2 and Stalker. There are very few Stalkers, and you don't know the half of it. A quaint little example I cannot allow this video to gloss over is the radio when you cryptographically sequence the air. If immersion is an illusion, what a brilliant trick it is to literally tune into the outside world, to hear what Gotham thinks, even when you're buried in a level that may otherwise feel like an alternate dimension.
You're listening to Gotham FM, your #1 place for all that's happening in Gotham City.
There are only so many conversations recorded, but I'm sure you'll agree, this is a zesty bop, and if you tune into the right frequency, a secret code foreshadowing Arkham Knight. Translated, the voice foretells fear will tear Gotham to shreds. And ironically, it's scarier than anything Scarecrow actually does in the game. DJ, drop a beat. A less quaint, but perhaps even more brilliant example is the architectural afterimage of the people who settled here. Watch as the light Gothic style that dominates the city transforms into some blend of Art Deco and Art Nouveau. As you approach the oldest parts of town, the ghost of Wonder City can be found fading in the museum wallpaper, on dusty, scattered lamps, the monorail station, or the subway entrance itself, for which equivalents still exist in Paris today. The incarnation of Arkham City we know is permeated by histories, desires, and perspectives because it is small enough to do so. From the museum into Wonder City. From an ancient subway advertisement for the wonders of Wonder City into an actual boss fight. From a modern advertisement in the museum into actual encounters. Setup into payoff. The nurse you rescue from the steel mill attacks on your second visit, scared you were a thug.
I could have killed you with this thing.
Believe me, Doctor. When someone takes a swing at me with a pipe, they don't get the chance to apologize.
That's going on an American's bumper sticker. The cops you rescue from the museum call after Wonder City to give you a gadget as repayment. It may be a shit gadget, but it's the thought that counts. You can find Penguin being bullied in a display case once Two-Face's men capture his territory. Everyone you rescue from Riddler's 50 Shades of Green dungeons end up in the church with additional dialogue. If you so choose, Mr. Freeze's wife can be rescued from Joker. A trail of ice appears afterwards, leading from her holding pen to the GCPD. Nora is why Freeze attacks when you bring him the binding enzyme from Raish's blood. The fight is why Joker has time to steal the cure, and that's why the next dungeon following Wonder City is the Steel Mill. Jack Ryder and Vicky Vale fit the same pattern, both introduced in the game's first minutes.
Bruce Wayne? Great.
Both have unexpected resolutions further in.
You a fan?
No.
Ryder then hides until it's safe to head to the church, but Vicky's second appearance is immediately after the freeze fight, when Joker fires his cringe-seeking missiles, both providing a believable, so valuable perspective on what Gotham thinks of the Arkham City. Political prisoners are no rarity inside, but being complete cowards who apparently don't know where the counter button is, the lucky ones keep out of sight, planning their next move. Panicking about their next move, more accurately. It's a worthy reminder we're spoiled playing the symbol of human fortitude. For anyone but the monsters, Arkham City is hell. The fact that there aren't 300 more examples is why any exist at all, but the few remaining are of a different nature. You see, every plate in Arkham City is spinning, even the ones you can't see. Immediately after Wonder City, immediately before Freeze, we detour to rescue Quincy Sharp, the asylum's old warden, from being beaten to death. What the hell is he doing here? Loose ends.
No! Please, no!
I want to know all about Strange, and how you're tied into all this.
I'll tell you everything! Strange came to me back at the asylum. He told me he had friends. Powerful friends. The sort of people who could make things happen. All I had to do was turn a blind eye to his experiments and work on my campaign. He said his friends would ensure that I won.
Who are they?
I have no idea. I never met them. They funded everything. Money was no problem. All I had to do was set up Arkham City and put Strange in charge. It made perfect sense. The scum of Gotham needed to be punished. It would be my legacy.
Strange has been removing anyone with evidence against him and sending them into Arkham City. Enjoy your legacy.
The only setup for that was the existence of Arkham City, but in revealing that a plate was spinning by its very crash, we gained believability and dimension nevertheless. Strange's interview tapes repeat the same concept, if you happen to know they exist. Arkham's audio logs are widely considered the best in the business. Good stories, told conveniently. City has more good stories, in which Strange dissects our beloved characters with glorious cruelty. Or at least, he attempts to. Humor is strong.
I was right, of course.
Well, who is he?
Ah, but that would spoil the game for you, wouldn't it?
You must tell me. I implore you, Strange.
Really, Edward? If I could figure it out, it must be child's play for you.
But I...
Interesting. Tell me, Edward, how is the Riddler like a blank dictionary? You're both at a loss for words.
Characterization is stronger, and there's a wellspring of lore too. How did Catwoman know where the safe was? How did Two-Face know she'd be there? Good stories. Thing is, they're just not told conveniently. Asylum's tapes play on when you exit the menu. Cities do not. That's about 90% of your potential listeners gone in an instant, leaving a mere fraction of the fraction who even know they exist. You don't collect them. They simply appear, buried in the menu. Did you notice? It's a damn good thing then, nothing vital is tucked away in the menus. If it happens, it has an answer. But if it's important, you won't have to go looking or listening to find it. The territory struggle is directly and continuously affected by the arms trade, for example. Your ass is directly and continuously affected by it, and so your journey will oversee the details. Under-the-table imports from Strange are received by Joker at the root of Wonder Tower. And Penguin? Wow.
Machine guns. These little beauties fire over 100 rounds a minute, and even better, are so inaccurate, you don't even need to try. How good is this stuff? Stops a 9mm at close range and keeps you warm in the cold. Check out these little beauties. State-of-the-art military hardware means no one will be able to hide in the shadows. Interference generators, at the flick of a switch, turns even the most technologically prepared attacker into a caveman feeling their way in the dark. Now, when you really want to surprise a sneaky little bitch that's hunting you down, use these. real surprise like a powder to a C4, blowing your legs off when you least expect it.
And the mechanics themselves are payoffs to setups. Your experience of Predator, fully integrated into the larger world. Arkham City is tighter than that guy's mum on prom night, a cohesion rarely even approached by the AAA circuit. The attention this game paid, and the immersion it therefore reaps, is closer to Deus Ex than Night. But I didn't get theatrical just then to impress you. No. You see, cohesion isn't the only thing that has density to thank. The evolution of Predator spread over the steel mill, Wonder City, and the museum. That draws my attention to the structure of things. Distribution. As it applies to City's story, distribution is the second part of the bedrock. As it applies to mechanics, its competence explains why systems that may not be world-class alone can produce a consistently excellent experience in practice. This is the final forest. It is to games what plot, pace, and editing is to a movie. What goes in, when, and where. How it all fits together. Arkham Knight's Batmobile is exquisitely designed, from form to function, nigh flawless, but distribution changes everything. If it's that damn important, why is it so rarely discussed? Because of two massive bitches. One is games, the second is words. Pacing. What a prick. The word, I mean. It's a misleading little shapeshifter that means rate of important things happening as often as it's taken to mean distribution as a whole. That's a semantic confusion we can't allow. Pacing is a spoke on the wheel of distribution. It controls how fast it spins. But now comes the second bitch. Games. Attempting to fully and simply understand game distribution in terms you can smoothly map from movies or books is hopeless. The simulated fantasy we questionably choose to call video games is as complex as it is young. It's easy to say whether or not a game was repetitive. It's hard to go any further. Time to get hard. Wait. No. Time to go deeper. Shit. Time for me to guess. First, let's call content an instance of brain food. You want to know how games distribute their brain food. You start with the basics. In a vacuum, challenge or difficulty must balance between overwhelmment and boredom to achieve the psychological sweet spot called flow. Here, you feel able to complete a challenge, but only with significant effort. Here, your input, and ideally your success, feels meaningful, not trivial, not hopeless. The next task is maintaining that middle over time. Games are long, they repeat iterations of the same core systems, so as the player's skill grows, difficulty must keep up. If it does, the game stays fun. Challenge is the most important thing a game can distribute, and yet it is no rare thing to play on a broken difficulty curve. Arkham passes the first test. The second comes from a simple fact. Difficulty is not the only pressure upon the player to learn and master. Novelty is the other side of the coin. When a thing is new, we are engaged and entertained by the active or passive discovery of its nature until it has been made not new. This type of learning is powerful enough to sustain shallow mechanics, like Catwoman's movement, or exotic gimmicks like Knight's crane, for a brief time. You just gotta make sure it stays brief, unlike Asylum's gadgets. And from this, we realize something vital about novelty. It's a state. It applies to something else. You can master assassin fights over time, but assassin fights are new. Once. To not overwhelm, but to peak engagement consistently over a playthrough. Newness must be distributed just like challenge. The question then is, do Rocksteady pass the second test? And the answer is that their performance is world class. Because of one very simple, very important quality. Quantity of quality. Asylum's gadgets is not a mistake Arkham regularly makes. In fact, both City and Asylum are so packed with ideas that with rare exception, every instance of a particular activity has a meaningful degree of new. Something good that is fresh every time. And where difficulty applies only to mechanics, novelty is fun on any dimension of a game's design. For encounters, it may be a special narrative context, a new mechanic, or a meaningful new configuration of enemy types. Are you not entertained? For non-encounters, it could be anything. Color, height, art, mindfuck. But as we've seen, it is reliably something, and something meaningful. The concept is simple. What sets Arkham apart is the abundance of good fuel in its humble size. And just like it applies to novelty, quantity of quality affects variation as a whole. Split the time you spend on a task in two. Take a break in between. It'll be more fun if you do. This is a fact of life. We don't like doing the same thing for too long. The why is for neuroscience. The point is dividing content avoids exhaustion, not making it better, but stopping it from getting worse. Arkham is a novel and creative game. Fitting all its ideas in 8 hours is going to have us changing what we're thinking about constantly. New configurations of enemies, new objectives, new worlds, and so we've got variation as a given. But on the mechanical side of things, this is all relative to the game's core systems. Combat, Predator, puzzles. 9 times out of 10, mechanical novelty makes its changes within these categories, but no player would enjoy all the game's Predator encounters back to back, no matter how novel each one may be. You have to vary the categories themselves. Novelty can't help you there, and this is where Arkham's quantity of quality steps in. X-Men Origins Wolverine will have to rely on switching between 2 over a period of 9 hours, as level designer Philip Koulianos represents graphically. But Rocksteady, by City, Arkham had strongly developed travel, Predator, combat, and puzzles. Here's Asylum's graph. Just imagine Nights, the game that doubled City's count with a Batmobile capable of its own movement, Predator, combat, and puzzles. Quantity of quality relative to the length of the game allows variance and its benefits to blossom, and we're not done yet. The metaphor of the break is immensely useful. It helps us explain the virtue of variation, but it's also useful to explain what variation has to account for. Variation has to manage stress. Tension is good, it's exciting, focusing, and it makes the subsequent release satisfying. A game with no tension is boring, but a game with too much is exhausting. In well-distributed games, like Metro and Arkham, heated challenge is reliably followed by time to cool off in a less stressful activity. In City, you'll experience the height of Rocksteady's artistic ability where the distracting battles and dramatic script beats aren't. The chasms, the Chamber of Secrets, the exhibitions. It's easy to take for granted, but even Rocksteady can get it wrong. Arkham Knight decorates its indoor arenas with great care, then rushes you out into relatively muted transition space before you get the chance to look around. The very relationship between tension and relaxation, however, the ratio, can change according to the dramatic structure. The closer to a climax of an act or of the story itself, the greater the proportion of tension, such as a greater proportion of boss fights. Pacing follows the same rules. The tempo of story beats and mechanical demand balances time to relax and internalize with the excitement of a quick pace. This relationship also alters according to the dramatic structure, and if you fuck it up, a bald guy chucks a chair at your head. Act 2's pace was fine in every regard except its glacial plot. Otherwise, City passes the test. Its best exhibition of pacing is still to come, but you've already seen Act 1 up close. Starts quick, slows just a little for mechanical tutorialization and the mysteries to resonate, then pumps things up with new gadgets, enemies, and plot developments in the steel mill. Catwoman keeps the mechanical pace high, but Batman's story is allowed time to breathe as she collects her things and visits Ivy. I had no devs to talk to or blogs to read to help sketch an impression of Arkham's distribution, though believe me, I looked. Odds say it's incomplete. There's things I'm not seeing, dots I'm not connecting, but we have never been closer to our goal than we are now, to figuring out why it was no rare thing to see remarks about how weirdly good Asylum's pacing felt. Remarks that were left at that. But they were right. Its distribution was weirdly good, where the good is doing the simple things right, and the weirdly is an abundance of strong ideas, no need to stretch itself thin, and the cascade of dubs those privileges let loose. Like, for instance, molding systems that may not each be brilliant individually into a campaign worthy of the title, Masterpiece. There is just one more thing. I saved the best till last, but mostly I saved it because it's something you ought to see up close, an esoteric layer to how games deal with the dramatic structure that we may notice glimpses of but rarely realize its full extent. What if, in the hyperdimensional realm of gaming, the dramatic structure could be expressed by more than just the script and difficulty? What if the things you'd never expect could have their own Act 1, 2, and 3? Drama is a struggle between the status quo and a new state of being, the state of a person, of a world, or of understanding. The dramatic structure structures it. It plays the part of bones. For our purposes, we don't need to deal with climaxes and acts and crises. For us, the best metaphor would probably be the simplest, the completion of a circle. You venture from your comfort zone, confront inner and outer demons, grow from these battles, and reach a new resolution back at the beginning. The journey is complete. The character has been reborn. Satisfying, right? It's instinctual to find a feeling of completeness in the circular journey. But why? Well, how are most things given meaning and definition in a story? Primarily through contrast and comparison. The ally and villain archetypes are often very similar to the protagonist with one major difference, in order to highlight, create conflicts, and incite growth regarding that one key difference. Strange and Batman both see themselves as Gotham's guardian, but they go about it in different ways. So if the pulse of a story, drama, is the conflict between the old and the new, and if definition can come from comparison, then a character's journey, their growth and change, can be highlighted by placing the new self in the same circumstances and settings as the old self, by placing strong and knowledgeable Batman in the same place as he was when he was weaker and in the dark. Only a scarce few rooms are shared between each visit to the steel mill, but the similarity highlights what has changed. It creates a sense of climax, of resolution. It makes things feel satisfying and complete. The last regular combat encounter in the game is in the same room it all started in. You can find your torture chamber. You can even find the guy from the CGI trailer. That's one hell of a circle. For a more abstract example, look to your relationship with the outside world and the way it becomes more conflicted and dramatic with time. Then look to how things change. Everybody's scared of a gun. Avoidance has been drilled into your head since Asylum, figuratively if not literally. But as City goes by, Batman grows into the dive bomb, the disruptor, the shockwave, the freeze grenade. The tables have turned. Who's scared now? It's not just about being stronger, it's about seeing what used to be in a clear and strong contrast to what is now. And so the skill tree isn't just about providing more toys, it's about distributing the right toys at the right time to achieve what Far Cry 3 mythologized. Make a learning curve, a learning circle. Make a student feel like a master instead of just a stronger student. For example, on your first run, in the first hours, you'll fight like a younger gamer with nothing held back. Admirable, but mistaken. Critical strikes and their incentives, more damage, more special combos, can guide you from button mashing at the beginning to timed, deliberate inputs by the end. Student, master. And again, the blade dodge robs Batman of the upper hand, remember? Student, but then you get the takedown and take it back. Master. The League of Assassins solidify that growth beyond the menus. 4 quick strikes compared to 3 slower ones, but the mechanics only underscore a simpler truth. They're assassins, fought in places of legend to earn the right to face Ra's al Ghul himself, and having grown from being threatened by a thug with a broken bottle to fending off the League is what EA might call a powerful sense of pride and accomplishment. Dramatic structure. Consider this an open topic as we move on to a more detailed look at the events of Act 3. There's a lot worth putting under the microscope to judge individually, but how else, I wonder, might the game's distribution help its narrative? Well, speaking of pride and accomplishment, finally, time for this punk-ass cure. Yes, our ass just got punked by the cure. And no, it's not a coincidence that Arkham chooses in every entry to distribute most of its weirdness further into the runtime. City stays close to the ground until the psychedelic mystics of Wonder City and Mad Hatter's special tea in the later hours, because exploring the farthest reaches of what the rules allow for can create a sense of maximizing conflict and rising drama. So let's go down the rabbit hole, you and me.
You will do anything I want. You will obey me, and me alone. You're on a train. It's moving. No. This isn't right. You can't be doing this.
I should have never smoked that shit, now I'm fighting rabbits in Wonderland. Alice and Gotham blend seamlessly. Each is mythic, each as twisted as the other. And the haunting scream, the hypnotic tumble through this misshapen nightmare, works to create a stunningly effective scene for the short time it's needed. It's almost disturbing, so it's certainly memorable. You're literally on the clock, plummeting into an eternal rabbit hole. Because madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little trick. First, while rescuing Vale, an inexplicable scene change to an unknown figure, foreshadowing that something may be awry. Then, an odd subversion of expectations. Lucius has manufactured the cure? What? So everything I just did was, you'll think exactly that, but also that you ought to take it. And those are the seeds of doubt that make the twist feel fair and earned. So beautifully simple, so memorable an effect. A 5-minute punch-up against some rabbits and a high-value target is widely considered the best side quest in franchise history, because it's brilliant, it's beautiful, and it's brief. But of course, like weirdness, it's also no coincidence that decisive character fights are happening in such proximity as Act 3 begins. The final test of the Demon Trials is to take your crown from Ra's al Ghul. From the frantic pace of attacks punctuating these warriors' skill, to the seamless flow between the demon realm and reality, to the orgasmic use of slow-mo at just the right moment, Batman knows how to fight 6 men, now engage 600. This is a boss fight worthy of its legendary mantle in spectacle alone. In the assassin phase, Ra's cuts through the pack quickly and frequently, keeping your focus under intense pressure. Whereas, the Spider-Man 3 phase splits your attention 3 ways. Avoid shurikens, while also avoiding protruding swords, while also firing the electric charge through a gap in his rotating shield. It's unique, it's a tough test of timing, but even though the final phase is the toughest of them all, it is not the most challenging. With a window even tighter than that guy's mom on prom night, considered fire is of no more use to you than button mashing and hoping for the best. It's difficult to the point that not thinking is the smartest play. It's also the only problem in a tense, novel, deep, and fantastical fight. And only 15 minutes later comes the next one. Mr. Freeze tops nearly every boss fight ranking franchise-wide and is rarely absent among people's fondest memories of Arkham City. He's something of a legend. Why? Because he's a good fight, for a short time, and no one had ever seen anything like him before. We've had simple scraps of stealth, we've had gadgets, we've had combat, but when Rocksteady were making their very first Predator boss fight, and Activision Blizzard turned down the role, Bobby Blizzard was the perfect fit. For 5 minutes, locked in with a stone-cold Terminator, you are put under sudden pressure to apply everything you know about Predator in an entirely new way. What we know about Predator now is that it is designed to deliver on its name, stealth, made for the Batman fantasy. You scan for prey, reposition in pounce-like bursts, and pick off targets when they stray from the herd. In few other stealth games can you drop into the arena whenever you want, wherever you want. Freeze simply flips the power differential, now you're the prey. Each takedown type will only work once. His infrared scanning technology allows him to trace your footsteps, imposing a time limit on stillness, and the frozen gargoyles remove opportunities for rapid movement, easy escape, and comfort. He is the planning phase of Predator, with your legs sawn off and a gun to your head, forcing you to rapidly perform the takedowns you know, and frantically scan for those you don't. A ceiling perhaps, a corner, electricity. Freeze's boss mechanics do not compose his fight. They and the arena are a catalyst, a rebalancing force upon Predator's pre-existing set, and that way, Freeze benefits from an immense depth, while remaining entirely novel. It's Predator, but like you've never seen it before. It's deep, and it's new. We know the result of that. But the harmony of the chilling voice, with the chilling music and visuals, with the tension of being forced to use your own footsteps as a lure, and the test of quick thinking, keeping it true to the Batman fantasy, tips it over the edge of excellence, and into something I would call great. Yet, even greatness is not Freeze's most surprising quality. What's truly remarkable is that Arkham's greatest test is also its greatest lesson. In forcing use of every takedown, you're forced to look for every takedown and perform on the spot. If you never did learn to mind your surroundings, now you'll have to. There would be a wisdom in distributing a boss who shatters unfamiliarity far earlier as a tutorial, but perhaps it would not match the wisdom of where he is. Freeze. Ra's, within 20 minutes of each other. Variants remain strong thanks to the total opposition of their mechanics and feel, but multiple decisive boss fights in proximity communicates mastery, climax, and closure like little else. Like dramatic comparisons, like weirdness, the heat is ironically rising, the drama is climbing, the circle is completing. You can feel it. Pacing, or tempo if you prefer, crowns the build-up, and in just the way we said it would. After emerging from Wonder City, the game's plot pacing will jar you. A sudden movement, whose contrast against the zombified stupor of the script over the previous hours unintentionally enhances the effect of moving into what would be considered fast-paced for any game. Sharp gets too close to the edge, Vicky gets blown, a Tricky gets shown, and Ivy comes out of her hedge. Freeze loses his cool, and Joker raises the heat, having stolen the cure while Prickter held your attention. All within a half hour? Things happening? In my Arkham City plot? It's almost like there's an imposter among us.
What are you waiting for? Any last requests? How about a joke?
How about a trade? Let him go. Take me in his place.
I'll handle the jokes around here.
Talia, what are you doing?
I represent the great Ra's al Ghul, head of the demon, master of the League of Assassins.
Well, bully for you.
Free Batman, and we will give you the secret of immortality.
Don't do it, Talia. He'll be unstoppable.
What? You mean she's telling the truth? Immortal?
Do we have a deal?
No!
Oh, shut up! After you, my dear.
We offered you this chance, Batman. Now follow your heart.
You like that transition? Well, this time I do deserve the credit, because it's very conveniently an example of good distribution.
Well, in that case, I think we can strike a deal. I need a way into his vault, and I think you're just the girl to help. If you get me in there, I'll get your plant. Deal? I should kill you.
Fine.
No kiss? I'm kinda disappointed.
Out! Now!
Roses are red, violets are blue. Let me go, bitch. I'll bring a plant to you. Not bad, Selina. Only took you half the game. And yet more spinning plates enter the fray. Talia into Catwoman. Variation rises, tension is given a controlled release. A dub on two fronts. Shifting perspective is a convenient card to have in the deck. I'd bet they'd have done it more if they could, because it's a pure and perfect example of an idea worth exploring moments before Protocol 10. That the bottleneck of a story's distribution is what the story can justify. Players will suspend their disbelief for a mechanic that just exists all of a sudden, or a new ability they got from the skill tree, but you might need some writing to explain why the blue level is suddenly pink, or why a character is where they are. What determines that might depends on your ambition. Plot-first games like Red Dead or Last of Us will not hesitate to sacrifice variation or mechanical flavor for the sake of believability, because to maintain that believability, you need to excuse everything, including looting cupboards apparently. But the overwhelming majority of games do not hold the script in such high regard. Zelda, Chris Pratt, Bongo Kaplooey, and even Dark Souls are on the opposite end of the spectrum, a sequence of levels and ideas, with plot as a thin excuse to move between them. Arkham City is among these games, and as we've seen, it isn't exactly good at disguising that fact, which is a problem. It needs a disguise, because it wants its cake, and to eat it too. It wants a life-size character-driven script to succeed, without the priority of distribution. Not exactly something a book has to deal with. But Arkham Asylum was different, because it had an open goal, set in a fantastical mythic universe, on a tight island where every building was wild and wildly different. Gave Asylum the power to look, feel, sound, and construct itself on a large scale or a small scale, however it pleased. It had the privilege to distribute its wordless narrative as it saw fit, and it did. But the power to do the same for its script, the power to do whatever it wanted, was in the inciting incident. A prison break. Batman was a small piece of a large and evolving puzzle. Scarecrow could pounce from any corner he wished. Joker and Harley were always on the move, while Ivy's campaign to install a green ethno-state had literally earth-shattering effects island-wide. Any villain had narrative context to be anywhere, to interact with anything or anyone at any time, and all of them wanted you tested. Only Ivy wanted you dead, and so the Rogues Gallery were almost direct surrogates for the game designers. Joker could provide a puzzle at any point, and he'd believably want to. But realize, again, what's actually being affected. There's no reason to assume the puzzle wouldn't be there in absence of Asylum's privilege. It's the context of Joker, the variation and significance of his presence that would be gone. It'd just be a puzzle, because you need an excuse for characters, far more so than for gameplay. Arkham Asylum set up that excuse from the word go, an all-inclusive pass for its script to do and have anything it wished for. City was not so lucky. It's not even a prison break, it's just a prison, where every major villain is snugly burrowed into their strongholds and interact only through turf wars. This is why the story until Act 3 can be viewed as the Joker bit, the Raish bit, and the Penguin bit, where characters rarely intertwine. And the reason I'm telling you all this now is because City, with no such potential, scored anyway. That's its greatest trick yet, to distribute with the least of regards for its script and get away with it, to still have it succeed by the end. Arkham City's final hours are the exception to the rule that Arkham scripts need a bedrock. They show us you can have both, as Act 3 makes almost every spinning plate work. If Cohesion saw Rocksteady tie up minor threads, then this is about taking the same philosophy of completeness to where it really matters. Be it after Protocol 10, within it, or here in the moments before. The plot is woven such that everything set up is paid off, everything introduced is resolved in a logical, dramatic manner, and all at a high pace, which works in concert with the minor threads and mechanics to keep the game gripping. Talia, not ready to give up on Batman, risks her life and Joker's immortality in a therefore meaningful revelation of her love and determination, which itself sets up Batman's personal stakes during Protocol 10. It makes sense that Freeze would betray us for his wife's sake, and for Joker to have orchestrated this cruel distraction. Catwoman's subplot, meanwhile, could have done with a bit more attention. Nonetheless, breaking Ivy's orchid, yet leaving the money behind for Batman's sake, is a meaningful and believable resolution to her moral ambiguity. If she would be selfish enough to abandon Batman otherwise, our first meeting, where the roles are reversed, sets up the victory of her inner hero and prevents this selfless act from feeling contrived. He saves her, so she saves him. It's a color of good that works on Catwoman, as another circle completes. With rare exception, this trend will continue until the credits roll. Its plot will succeed, and though it may take some time for you to believe it, so will its themes. We have our picture of Arkham's quality. Protocol 10 will commence now. Let's see how it ends.
I guess we both know what Protocol 10 is now, right? If you're planning on stopping it, you need to hurry.
Oracle. Strange is launching missile strikes on Arkham City from Wonder Tower. You shut this place down. Joker's taken Talia. I'm going after them.
Protocol 10 is a dramatic masterclass. The echo of the story's smashing plates is the game world itself being demolished around you, while the gothic score howls its horror, and Batman is forced to silence his screaming heart to save the criminals he crusades against.
He'll kill Talia.
You need to think this through. Batman can't let all these people die.
My tracker's not activating. Reroute all Wayne Tech satellites to boost the signal.
I can't do that. I realize it is difficult, Sam, but you need to decide if one life is worth sacrificing to save 1,000.
Don't do this, Alfred.
Batman must save Gotham. I'm sorry, but deep down, you know I'm right.
Batman and Talia have not shared a deep romance in this story, but seeing a character we know to be mythically rational falter infuses this public battle with palpable personal stakes, just as Harvey did for The Dark Knight. Batman would risk his own life without hesitation. It's not meaningful drama to see him make that choice. It's meaningful drama to see him choose the criminals we fought since the night began over the one person he loves. It's the highest the pressure can get, and so it is the ultimate confirmation of his character. But that personal desire makes us want to save Talia, and so to stop Protocol 10. Drama, stakes, and all in less than a minute. Those opening lines do with words what Nick Arundel does with music. The gunships themselves provide a further dramatic edge. They shoot on sight and they won't give up without a chase. This is the ultimate evolution of City's level design. Everywhere might now be the cover that saves your life, and so movement is uniquely stressed in equal measure. It's like I said, Protocol 10 is a dramatic masterclass. There's just one last piece of the puzzle. Themes. Of course, not every story takes the idea of a final battle literally, but every story climaxes with the themes and decisive combat. The mythic symbol of human resilience inspires Foley and the GCPD to rise like he did and fight back against overwhelming forces. Or the battle between Batman and Joker at the tower, while what they believe in goes to war on the ferries. And Protocol 10? Well, obviously those would be the themes of Arkham City. Execution, injustice. The prison-turned-death camp is a response to the failures of Batman's legend. Strange tells you as much when you track the origin of Protocol 10's signal to the base of Wonder Tower, where it all began.
Stop right there, Batman. We need to talk. And I know you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if your actions caused this poor man to die. I have a question for you. Before my arrival, this city was drowning under a tide of filth. Had you ever considered that all this is your fault? Your presence creates these animals. Like germs, they spread. You created the environment that allowed the germ to mutate, to become stronger. Look at the Joker. Would he even exist if not for you? It must be depressing. All your sacrifices, and yet, you are the one to blame. Oh, this is beautiful. We have at long last defeated the great Batman.
Arkham City's themes are an original incarnation of a very old battle of ideas. Red Hood and The Dark Knight Returns deal with Batman's refusal to end a life on a personal level, where Arkham City and The Dark Knight Rises approach the Batman myth as a public policy, to which Strange's equally public measures are the response. His final solution is the villain that wishes to succeed Batman's myth, to prove its failure to the world, and to display his superiority. The fundamental argument remains the same. Batman won't stop the monsters for good, and if he invites their presence, does he not bear the blame when they kill again? But there's a further nuance to Arkham City's public vision of pacifism versus murder. We all love killer vigilantes like Red Hood and the Punisher, who fancy themselves a city's immune system, but Strange strips this side of its pistol-smoking badassery and shows us the grotesque face of Nazism. His voice and lab coat are not coincidental. We're given the timelessly strong critique of Batman's approach to justice without pretending like that's all there is to say. Of course, Protocol 10 is where these visions of heroism explode into war. Obviously, right? But it's not obvious. No, not of course. This is news to half the people who played Arkham City, because what's so different from The Dark Knight is the type of explosion. This is a big bang, as in now is when they began. I want to show you something. The trouble with the demon trials is no demon, it's the trials. There is no demon. Only one man has ever completed them. Most are consumed as they stand before the enormity of creation. So Talia says. I was pushed harder by Wonkatech's AR challenges. You see, they're not a monster. They don't even spike the difficulty curve. Maybe it was just so damn hard for everyone else because they couldn't glide. But it's a serious problem I approached an underworld made to break men to pieces, like a sightseeing tour. Thing is, I didn't realize it was a problem then. I was distracted by the sightseeing. Look around. What do you see? Arkham City, Wonder City, their ruins are teeth on the cliffs of entropy. There's a story to this place. Sun and sand bake a vision of Gotham. Every when. Clockwork in the distance, the coarse desert is the course of time. This is a dimension where time is painted on the canvas of space. Gotham's lives and deaths in a landscape. And its message is clear. Arkham City, Wonder City, they're the same. They'll keep happening. And the proof is very much in the pudding. Look around. What do you see? A prison? But what prison? This is no penitentiary, it's no asylum or holding cell. No, this, loosely, is a panopticon, designed by philosopher Jeremy Bentham in the mid-1700s. Michel Foucault described it as a diagram of power, reduced to its ideal form. Every prisoner can be seen, every prisoner knows it, but they don't know when, so they behave as if they're always observed. Arkham City is no true panopticon. There are too many blind spots, and of course, Strange doesn't care for enforcing any rules. But realistic function isn't the point. The point is the influence, the intention, and the way it all makes you feel. Helicopters encircle the streets, cameras peer at every exit, signs repeat the fact of their observation, and who could escape the watchful eye of the tower, or the very city that rejected them? What we discussed with the atmosphere was a part of something bigger. There is an idea that madness and hatred and dehumanization would come back to bring death to Gotham's doorstep once again, communicated simply and beautifully in setting. A part of Arkham City's themes have lied dormant in the world itself, and yet in no other aspect of story. You're here, which means you've seen this game. I've left no vital stone unturned. Tell me, where did Batman or Strange's approach to justice affect anything beyond Talia's feelings? When was it even a subject you considered? The greatest failure of Arkham City's themes is obvious. They aren't obvious, because until now they were absent beyond the bounds of place, just like their ambassador, Hugo Strange himself. Like Arkham City and the mystery of Protocol 10 after the premise change, Strange became a shadow after the introduction. A 2D projection of a villainous presence, whose communication with security forces could be listened to, and parts of whose plan could be seen behind the curtains. But unlike Joker in Asylum, with whom no actual interaction occurs. That is why when Act 3 shudders him and what he represents into a 3D existence, it isn't jarring. It's just premature. We have no relationship with Strange. We know what he wants, but not why. The drama of Protocol 10 was built up too beautifully, but the meaning of it wasn't at all. And it's worse than confusing. It's worse than prematurity, because if a theme isn't woven into the story, it will not land. Hollywood's premier screenwriting tutor, Robert McKee, wrote, "You may have the insight of a Buddha, but if you can't tell story, your ideas turn as dry as chalk. There may be as much wisdom in a tweet as there is in the Shawshank Redemption, but you'll forget the tweet the instant you scroll down. The Shawshank Redemption could stay with you forever. Human beings will excuse any horror imaginable so long as it is out of sight. And even within stories, our nature proves itself when flattened cities fail to invest us, but one dead character draws out a tear. Ideas in sterile form bounce off our emotional defenses like a ping-pong ball off 10-inch steel. But music, the shorthand of emotion, slips underneath. And a story well told can meet the same ends by rendering an idea in the primal terms of empathy, people, place, desire, belief, conflict, change. A writer's idea not expressed in these terms, but simply spoken aloud using character as a mouthpiece, will stay on the level of a tweet. At best, it is forgotten about. Like Arkham City, at worst it's a preachy tweet, and the only thing they'll remember is their resentment. A truth that seems self-evident but isn't, is that where Arkham City's themes succeed or fail depends on the quality of their adaptation into the terms of story. The first failure is obvious, the second is distance. Let me show you how far it goes. One hell of a view, don't you think? The ascent of Wonder Tower gives you a good look at our burning city. I'm not going to ask what you see, but what do you feel? Disgusted? Like a hero? If you're watching Arkham City for the first time now, then your answer might be distorted. But if you aren't, what did you feel? Can you even remember? In Arkham City, there is a trend of distance. And I'm not talking about something you can measure in meters. I'm talking about feeling that spans from the start to the end. The clearest example of which is Batman himself. We haven't looked at our main character. Like him, let's be quick to the point. Batman is cool in Arkham City.
Married on Wednesday.
He has some badass moments, he's appropriately stoic and voiced very well. You've seen half the examples of a simple, unambitious portrayal of the character with nothing to praise especially and nothing to critique. Apart from just one thing. Batman is painfully inert, a man pathologically driven to protect human life, a man who saved Scarecrow from the maw of death, moments after being psychologically tortured by him, does not stand still staring gormlessly as Penguin executes his hostage. He can beat Ra's al Ghul and best the demon trials, but a midget with an umbrella is apparently too much to ask, as we see again in the aquatic chamber. Officer Forrester, scampering over the shark-infested waters, is cruelly turned into a copsicle, while Batman struggles? Whip out your Batclaw, mate. I could have done a better job than that. Chuck a fucking cornetto at his head. Or how about when Joker's battered hostage, Stacey Baker, is moments away from becoming two-dimensional in more ways than one, and sheer luck is the hero that saves her. The mythic representation of human potential that he is in this very series and this very game is stuck behind a grate. Remember the utility belt with such accessories as a grapnel gun, a Batclaw, and a remote-controlled Batarang, each of which could fit through these gaps and hit a woman famous for, what was it? Beating Batman? No, getting fucking demolished.
Get back in. Too slow, you big ugly bat.
Tends to happen when you're using Game Shark. And for my favourite of the bunch, here's Bruce's full reaction when Vicky Vale gets BTFO'd after the freeze fight.
We apologize for this interruption.
Christ, man, are you not going to save your other girlfriend? Now, Batman might not be Stop a Burning Helicopter Man, but he is Just Got the Freeze Grenade Man and Show the Slightest Intention of Quickly Arriving at the Crash Site Man. If your Batman is so stoic he doesn't even register care for human life, then your Batman is too stoic.
I need to set up a crime scene here.
This is not a mistake Arkham ever makes again.
That's 3 dead now. These animals are going to pay.
But City puts an Olympic emotional distance between you and heroism. Protocol 10 is just the next example. Let's invent some categories to simply break down what works here and what doesn't. If the character drama is Batman choosing the inmates over Talia, then the thematic drama is Batman saving people he spent the entire game fighting. Because contrary to strangers' beliefs, they don't deserve to die. The character drama works. Strong writing, 10 minutes of fresh gameplay, and harrowing music makes sure of that. The thematic drama doesn't. Because for each of those 10 minutes, we hardly see it, touch it, experience it. From the walkout to Wonder Tower, your objective is to tackle helicopter rungs and scan for lines of code. Our great act of heroism is kept at an emotional distance about as great as the literal distance, and technically saving them is like the Cure technically having public stakes. It's not enough alone. Interaction, death, heroism, these things are not experienced, they're implied by strewn bodies and radio chatter beyond the shroud of smoke. A shroud that I think was technically necessary, because Arkham City is a living, breathing place, but it only moves in stop motion. We see the result, never the transformation, the states, never the change. There's never a rough edge in sight because it never actually moves.
Get ready for a world of pain.
And the only times characters will visibly interact is in dungeons, scripted moments when you're kept at bay by the environment, or chained to a cutscene. Harley's janky Game Shark is the one exception. For the first time, Protocol 10 is change, and we're out in the open. But this city can't show it. Death stays referential, as if I'm not looking straight at the thing being referenced. Like, with my eyes. You're shooting a wall, you're shooting the floor, and with fireworks, I see. Hold on, is this just a YouTube prank? Paying a little attention to Protocol 10 is like walking backstage at a magic show. The game's up, and thanks to this charade, the ultimate thematic expression of the Batman philosophy that states even so-called scum deserve to live, is denied the opportunity to be experienced firsthand, felt up close, imprinted through the interactivity. It's something audiences might not have registered at all if it weren't for those precious opening lines. After the opening lines, Batman returns to his baseline of unemotional stoicism, again making it hard to get invested in this clash of wills. On Stranger's side, Protocol 10 is noticeably light on the brutality. That I understand. Superhero game, 16 plus. You have to sand down the edges. There is another way. Use the charade, but on people we care about. The church, the safe house of everyone we've rescued throughout Arkham City. Like Cash, like Stacey Baker. Now, I don't want to sound like a supervillain. Actually, fuck it, I do. Kill them all! No, but you can liquidate a few of these fuckers, can't you? Just a couple? Just one? Please? This is where a deeper bond to the political prisoners you save would have come in real handy. They're targets too. They're out here. Is that even acknowledged? No. Protocol 10 is industrial slaughter, but it does not make your blood boil. It doesn't even raise the temperature. The emotional distance between you and what is actually happening is more than just missed potential. It's a tragedy in itself, because that's the same distance between you and the themes. What it is not is the nail in the coffin. There may still be a way for City to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Our search begins with Strange's End. Let's find out if City can keep the drama high, the plot satisfying, and if these themes can be saved. Wonder Tower, the crown of Arkham City, is the perfect place to depose its king. A game's worth of background build-up sees its payoff way up here, and the view is to die for. What I did not expect is to literally die for it in a functional Predator arena. Wonder Tower is Predator designed inside out. Gargoyles line the outer rim, but the balconies are the only ways in. Making a move requires choke points. Choke points requires boots on the ground, where you're slow and vulnerable. The one vent that leads inside is no less risky. You can't drop into position instantly to exploit an opportunity. You have to plan carefully, and if you fuck it up, there are severe consequences. But there's more elegance to this design than meets the eye. You can still reposition at considerable speed from the outside. If you couldn't, you'd marginally raise the challenge at the cost of the depth, like Catwoman's Predator finale in the Vault. As we know, Arkham leans further towards responding to opportunities than creating them, so when you hard limit a Predator encounter to that slow, on-foot travel speed, you can't get to distant opportunities before they disappear, like galaxies outside the observable universe. And if you think they might be close enough, it's never worth the risk to try. The pace slows, the encounter shrinks in every meaningful regard, which is why Catwoman's best tactic in the Vault was simply to follow a likely target until he became vulnerable. But Wonder Tower strikes a novel and effective balance between restriction and freedom that easily makes it worthy of Batman's final Predator encounter in Arkham City. Strange is just the cherry on top. He patrols the inner observation deck, ratting you out to the guards if your paths cross. For all intents and purposes, this is his boss mechanic. Simple, but effective, because you don't know the mechanic exists. Accidentally triggering it leads to some novel oh fuck moments, and builds up an important sense of rivalry for your final battle. But what do they say? Snitches get stitches?
You have not won. You cannot win. I, Hugo Strange, am your successor. I have saved Gotham.
Oracle, shut this place down.
My pleasure.
You've ruined everything. Get your hands off me.
Look at what you've done.
It's glorious, isn't it?
You're finished, Strange.
I have powerful friends, Batman. This is just the beginning. You cannot stop me. Soon I will command forces beyond your comprehension. I have achieved what the great Batman could never do. Gotham will forever thank Hugo Strange!
Your part in this is over, Professor Strange.
Why? I did everything you wanted.
Indeed. You clearly demonstrated that Batman is better than you. Let him die, Detective.
He was your puppet, Raish. Why?
Yes, Raish was behind Strange, figuratively and literally. The Demon Trials, Wonder City, these levels foreshadowed the nature of Arkham City as strongly as they foreshadowed this twist. Having already beaten Raish keeps our suspicions low enough to not make the reveal blindingly obvious. It was fair, and it was surprising. I expect nothing less of Arkham City by now. But of course, it's not that simple. Should it have happened at all? In Arkham Knight, in the Dark Knight, numerous core villains serve separate purposes under one thematic banner. Joker and Two-Face, Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight. But Strange and Ra's share identical purposes. Their plan, knowledge, and desires are essentially the same. One is simply the master, and that dilutes our respect for the student at the worst possible time. We topple Strange at the climax of Protocol 10 and the peak of the city, only to learn the true archvillain was an ass we beat 2 hours ago. Robs the setup of its payoff. This is where Act 3's strong plot weave makes the game less dramatic, but worse, less interesting too. By portraying Ra's and Strange as functionally indistinct, by saying Wonder City literally caused Arkham City, Rocksteady yank the comparison out of the thematic realm. They sever the implication of cyclical inevitability and connect it instead to the will of one madman. The moral argument was, we bury our past only to repeat it. The moral argument now is, Rachel Gabagool, what a prick. And if that was truly their vision, then who am I to say it was wrong? But Rocksteady built an open goal to speak on cyclicality. We walked through the ruins of the first failed attempt to save Gotham, and the Demon Trials compared it to Arkham City, with imagery of clockwork, eternity, and entropy. I find it difficult to believe, or to accept, that they deliberately gave up the shot in favor of a plot twist that made the story worse. If so, a shame on two fronts. As the scene moves on, pay close attention to Batman.
And you failed to see it through.
But
when you came to me with Batman's identity, I gave you this chance to prove your worth, providing you with limitless resources for your plan. You came close, but you have failed me.
He's going to die, Ra's. He needs medical attention. Now!
Do as you wish, Detective. He's already dead to me.
I'm so close. Just give me more time.
Too late. I don't give second chances. This is a good day, Detective.
Good? People are dying.
The world will not miss them. Why should you? Look at my work. You may have defeated Strange, but this is just the beginning. Come with me. We will wipe this world clean.
Never.
You're wrong, Ra's. You've become what you've always fought against.
And I will stop you.
I doubt it.
Computer, activate Protocol 11.
What are you doing?
Passcode Wayne. No!
Get out of there!
An elegant, fitting, dramatic end. Talia's father has been double penetrated. That was a very poor choice of words, though Batman certainly tried to prevent it. This is a much needed, and as we'll see, very funny exception to the troubles with Batman's heroism. His dramatic attempts to save Strange and Ra's are important actions in the context of critiquing his belief they ought to be saved. It's not too late to make this war of ideas work. I said Arkham City's themes will succeed. Now there's only one place they can.
Hello? Is anyone there?
I'll get back to you. Something's come up.
Hello, Batman. I know you can hear me. I've not caught you at a bad time, have I? I was worried that you may have forgotten about little old me. Take a look at your girlfriend, who, as you can see, is in danger of having her pretty little brains splattered all over this camera.
Ignore him, beloved. Let him die.
Oh, how romantic. Only problem is, I've never felt better. And we both know you really can't ignore me. Can you?
The most confusing thing about the Strange Ra's plot twist is that minutes later, Rocksteady demonstrate they know exactly how to split villains without diluting them. The danger of heat from the fire of chaos, and the schemer In Nolan's world, those qualities in the same character created the ultimate anti-Batman. In Arkham, you have them split in two under the same thematic banner, and that's why Joker and Talia's plot threads butting in for a second climax isn't jarring or abrupt. But perhaps this is confusing. Of course, Strange and Joker aren't exactly fans of each other in Arkham City. How does that work? How can the final battle against what Strange and Ra's represented be against Joker? He told us. Strange sees the purity of Joker's hate as the living monument to Batman's sins. His greatest point is that this germ, this animal, is still breathing. Strange fights the Batman myth consciously. Joker does it by being his proof. And this continues Strange's philosophical argument posthumously. That is the link, the underlying thematic thread, stringing together two characters to create one greater force. A force that fights the Batman myth, the thematic anti-Batman. And yes, that makes Strange a better villain dead than alive. Though come to think of it, Arkham's quite good at that. The next question isn't why the transition works, it's where we're going. Perhaps the density and brevity of Arkham City made this idea of completing a dramatic circle easier for Rocksteady. Or perhaps they're just that good. But the unkindled spark of what could have been between Batman and Strange, the one exception to his absent villainy, is an outline and a message should you stumble upon it in Crime Alley.
How does it feel, Wayne, to stand on the very stones that ran with your parents' blood? Do you feel sad? Full of rage?
Most will miss it, but if you don't, it's the starkest reminder that Arkham City was once old Gotham, and this was truly the place Batman's parents died. That makes the Monarch Theatre the place Bruce asked to leave, the decision that started it all, and now it will end.
Hurry up and take your seat, Batman. The show's about to begin.
Let's just talk about this.
Now you want to talk. Too late, Batman. Give me the cure.
But you've already got the cure. Talia, no!
Problem solved.
You didn't need to.
Why? You would never do it. You left me no choice.
There's always a choice.
I had to save you. Harley Quinn stole it for him. I took it back. It's over.
Surprise!
Mr. J, you look perfect.
Ring, ring. So how do you keep a secret from the world's greatest detective? Well, do you know? You stick it right in front of him, right under his long, pointy nose, and wait.
Joker wants you to think he's sick. Then wait. Gotcha. You fell for the old fake Joker gang, Batman.
No, fuck up. Would you stop shooting my girlfriends in the spine, please? That's twice he's done that now. We fell for the old fake Joker gag. It reflects his character perfectly. It's the third twist this game has nailed. It's a beautiful way to kick up the drama, and it's hard to say what's more impressive, the foreshadowing, or that most players still fell for the trick. With brilliant touches like Joker's lack of skeletal structure, if you pay attention to detective mode, Rocksteady strike a very careful balance between hinting and giving it away. But their silver bullet are a number of misdirections that perform precisely the function Joker described, to hide the truth in plain sight.
Mr. J, it's a miracle. You look perfect. Oh no, it's not you, is it?
Be quiet, Harley.
The reason the game can bully you with the breadcrumbs without blowing the act is because even though Harley is a bit thick, we assume she's making the same sort of mistake we made. It's Joker. He's got mannequins and decoys everywhere. The idea of finding Joker to be met with a double is vividly imprinted in your first interaction. So when you find him dead moments later, you assume this, once again, is the old fake Joker gag. Nothing more than the old fake Joker gag. You don't look back. You don't look twice. You don't re-examine old assumptions and So the trick, blatant as it now seems, stays right under our pointy nose. Another critical example is the makeup scene, where Joker inexplicably changes forms by turning around. We know there's a trick, but we'll never guess what it is, because this time it is literally hidden in plain sight. That's not a mirror, it's a window. Look at Joker's flower on the same side as his extended arm in the reflection, but not in reality. Then look at the background. Where's the light coming from? The other side. That is fucking brilliant. This is prestige level trickery. Talia allowed herself to be kidnapped, to do to Joker what her lover could never do. But she didn't understand that Joker was more than her aloof assumptions about the criminal scum of Gotham. That with him, there's always another trick. It was that arrogance that caused her downfall, and it's that flaw that makes her death feel earned instead of forced motivation for the hero. The pace and sense of climax stay at a raging high as plot threads are tied, one by one. They are both elevated by the brilliant theatrics of a brilliant twist. But there is one problem. Once again, what fails here is Batman, who shows more emotion towards Talia's evidence display one game hence than he does when a woman who he momentarily compromised his own heroism for dies in his arms.
You weren't even supposed to be in here, Carl. Why sign up with Joker?
He shows more emotion towards Hugo Strange, a very funny exception, remember? Was it love? This cannot be justified. This is a man who time and time again has inconsistently bounced between a fiery zeal for the safety of others and cold, dead statuehood. This is a story that stands to gain absolutely nothing by draining the protagonist of emotion at a time like this. One mistake amongst a torrent of victories. Let the torrent continue.
Ladies and gentlemen, for one night only, standing in for yours truly, and doing a damn fine job of it, I give you...
The great mighty Pooh from Conker's Bad Fur Day? Alright then. Clayface charges, swipes and spins. He is default boss design for the first phase, with one exception. He can also roll towards you, quickly. And in each corner of the theater is a bomb. So with a little positioning, blow them away, Shakespeare. Tough, novel. Things are looking good for the Scatman, and they start looking better when the Batman decides to shake his spear right back at him. The theater was built over the Lazarus Pit. The circle completes again, and now in a ballet of badassery, with new counters and a spin attack special combo, you can twirl and slice these literal shitheads apart, avoid oncoming feces and control the crowd to buy yourself time for return fire, or return ice more accurately. This mechanical setup is nothing new or special to boss design, but what, you think I was disappointed? Put a sword in Batman's hands and your final fight quota is filled. This is the crown to Rocksteady's creativity, the ultimate mechanical send-off. Here's a fucking sword. Enjoy. The only problem with Clayface is the second phase camera. On PC, it's tough to left-click attack without slightly moving the mouse, and so, slightly moving the camera. The instant and aggressively automatic perspective readjustments can be a boss fight in themselves.
Get out of my way, bats! I've got a date with immortality! Quick! The cure! What are you waiting for? Come on! I killed your girlfriend, poisoned Gotham and hell! It's not even breakfast! But so what? We all know you'll save me.
Every decision you've ever made ends with death and misery. People die. I stop you. You'll just break out and do it again.
Think of it as a running gag. No!
Joker has run out of time, and finally, the immovable symbolic presence is reduced to a clamorous human animal who just wants to survive. There's a powerful honesty to the scene, and one last joke.
Do you want to know something funny? Even after everything you've done, I would have saved you.
You know, that actually is pretty funny.
The purity of Joker's animalistic hate is what Strange saw as the living monument to Batman's sins. That he was still breathing was Strange's greatest point. That Batman realized he still would have saved him, even after killing Talia and promising to do it all again, is Strange's ultimate victory. Would doing the right thing mean not being Batman? The arrogance towards justice that killed Talia was an opposing and poetic reflection of the arrogance Batman must now confront. He cannot lie to himself anymore, not after this. He must realize his own insanity, and that actually is pretty funny. Joker's last laugh is as symbolic as it is literal. In one way or another, both of them died tonight. It is the fundamental tragic shape of Arkham City's end. The anti-Batman wins, and for the first time, the themes do too. If you do not see it now, I will show you, but there is true depth and great power to these last moments. The themes ignite from their strength. A genuine, effective tragedy is rare for modern superhero stories, and so if not mind-blowingly original, it is certainly not dulled by homogeny or predictability. City feels as fresh and exciting now as it did 10 years ago, which makes it all the more a shame that Batman's arc in City never saw the sequel it inherently sets up. Character arcs revolve around a central defining character flaw, and ultimately, the reckoning with it. Batman's flaw is revealed and accepted. So where's the reckoning? Knight was under no obligations, but it's a true sequel to Arkham City in very few ways, and I've always found that unintentionally added to the tragedy. Now I think it's time to delve into the depths of this ending. Time to show you. It's easy to recognize the strength of the performances, the music, the shots, and we've seen how Batman's myth and identity has been thematically destroyed. But the forest, a more subtle but equally powerful part of the puzzle that elevates its impact, memorability, and ultimately the success of the themes, is Batman's reaction, not just to his own death, but his sorrow at Joker's. That discussion begins at the symbolic comparison to Cain and Abel, the first image, the last. This is Rocksteady's final circle complete, both as the archetypal symbol of fratricide, brother killing brother, but also as the pose in the painting, famously completed in London in the year 2011 at the historical building of Rocksteady's office. It is indeed an original, but the pose, most famously used in Michelangelo's, Pieta? Whatever, intensely evokes a feeling of loss and sadness. Smart, effective, and it's something we can intuitively understand that these two nemeses would share a connection, which is why playing on it with the pose and the solemn tone grants the ending a universal emotional nuance. But it's not short-lived. It works once you've thought about it too, because the symbol merely reaffirms a deep-set and deeply discussed psychoanalytic bond. Let's go a little further into their connection. Archetypically, Batman is Apollo, Joker is Dionysus, or Batman is order, and Joker is chaos. This is a simple and widely known approximation, but all it explains is their opposition, not why they attract. The best way to get to the deepest layer is viewing Batman as integrated shadow and Joker as pure shadow, because it reveals their inseparability despite their polar behaviors. Put as simply as I can get away with, the shadow is the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. Joker is a hateful animal, so he's not just chaos. He's the shadow of chaos, as edgy as that sounds, and he is purely, only this. In all of us, there is a part of that demon. We've all wanted to be cruel. We've all wanted to break things. We've all wanted to watch it burn. No one more than Batman, where deep trauma fuels a raging vengefulness, the demon he dresses like. But from the control of it rises his fortitude and heroism. Batman is a good demon, not one without the other. That is why his figure is horned and black as night, and that is why he is so fundamentally connected to Joker, the demon without the good. You can see now that order versus chaos isn't enough. Beneath is shadow and integrated shadow, which is why the archetypal Batman story is both order brought to a city's chaos, and control exacted over one's inner demon, as Batman resists the temptation to break someone's bones in just the wrong place. The temptation beckoned by Scarecrow, Talia, Selina, and Bane. but no one more than Joker, the inner demon externalized, whose only motive in life is to make Batman fall and become like him. That's why it means everything to see Batman laugh, or go too far, or tell a joke. Hit me. Hit me. You know you want to do it. It seems only right that in Arkham Knight, Joker is literally the devil on his shoulder. He is no functionally different there than he was in the flesh. They really were made for each other, and they really are destined to do this forever. Given the fact that both characters are fully aware of this personal relationship, it's easy for us to understand how a bond could grow despite their adversity. They are the only two in the world who can understand each other. As Rocksteady says, they are brothers. Joker didn't want to die, but he was the least alone he could have been, beside Batman, a simple human bond. And given the fact that both characters actively try to propagate their beliefs onto the public world by means of myth or undermining the social order, the part of them that was more than human, defined by meaning, is no less wounded. No lengthy explanation is needed to understand that the symbol of evil needs the symbol of good, and that the story of good needs the story of evil. That's why Joker scolds Harley for trying to remove Batman's mask, and partly why Batman is distraught at Joker's death. You complete me. It even seems natural for romance to blossom beneath the conflict, an idea that Joker humorously tortures Batman with on his way to freeze, and that Rocksteady play on with a not-so-subtle musical number in the credits. The classic 1950s love song, Only You, never means anything good in video games, but Joker's cover is a far cry from that norm. The sound quality heavily implies this is one of his voicemails, so meant for Batman's pointy ears only. But what's jarring is that there aren't any jokes. Perhaps the song itself is meant to satirize their connection, but satire is based upon some shred of reality. And what better way for Joker to be genuine about the friendship beneath his hatred, given that the odds say he will never get a chance to again. This tragic detail crowns Arkham City's stunningly smart and immensely effective incarnation of Batman and Joker. After 9 hours of absence or failure, the themes had 20 minutes to succeed, and in unforgettable form, victory was snatched from the jaws of defeat. A classic end was given to one of the best games I have ever played. Arkham City's brilliant presentation is intoxicating. Its mountains of ideas are masterfully sculpted into 9 hours of rarely worse than world-class entertainment. It's the best example of what a sequel should be that I know, walking the line of innovation and improvement with superhuman skill. Arkham Knight may be the king of the Batman fantasy, but it falls short. In many places Arkham City bordered flawless, places that are overlooked or taken for granted, forests that we may miss for the trees. When I look back on Arkham City, I find it easy to forget what no one could in 2011. Arkham was not just a gift, it was a surprise. No one had faith in the superhero genre. No one expected a licensed comic book game to win any awards, and yet it won all of them. Arkham was mind-blowing. No other comic world had been so vividly brought to life. No one knew the balance Arkham struck of cinema and control was even possible. But every year following, the element of surprise, the specialness of Arkham's innovations, has and will continue to wear off. More time has passed between now and Night than between Night and Asylum and now. Detective mode is in every game. We've all played iterations or imitations of its combat, and a great superhero game doesn't surprise anyone. Arkham's legacy is a victim of its own brilliance. What made it special then made it widespread, and so makes it less remarkable today. But in spite of this fated curse, one thing remains remarkable, that Arkham's time has still not passed, because it will never pass. I see now that there was so much more to these games than the innovations we know and find so easy to remember. Things that are less common in games now than they have been for a very long time. As the industry grew larger and competition grew fiercer, bigger and bigger games have become ever more hungry for your time and attention to justify their immense development costs. When everyone wants to be Destiny or Assassin's Creed Odyssey, pacing and progression systems must be diluted, super divided into weaker chunks, and made vastly less consistent. Arkham could not have done what it did with distribution were it not okay with being 8 hours long, nor could it have done what it did with atmosphere were it not okay with being small. As Night has proven within this very franchise, dependence on a vast open play space leaves a game far less capable of meaningful variation and atmospheric intensity. And yet, there are thousands of games not victim to modern trends that don't hold up today. Arkham is still remarkable, not because it existed on old trends, but because, as we have spent 30,000 words showing, it mastered them. No one could have known in 2011, but Arkham City was the peak of its era. So the final question I'd like to answer is this: how As in, what inspires unnecessarily good plot twists? What inspires cutscenes most will never see? What inspires animations and conversations for circumstances most will never be in? Adderall? The Sigma male grind set? Possibly, but my money's on passion. I read a lot of interviews in my research, and for AAA games, it can be painfully clear that I'm actually reading a script. Oh, of course, your dump truck of focus-tested features that pop up in every modern game was purely the result of creative inspiration. In the same way, I'm sure the cosmetic store is really just about pride and accomplishment. But it's different with Arkham. There is not even the slightest coat of inauthenticity. Rocksteady's founder and Arkham's director, Sefton Hill, has said things that completely changed the way I thought about games. He goes into these unnecessary explanations about how control schemes are basically the purest form of balancing, and a well-distributed game system is like learning a musical instrument on fast forward. You can feel the fire that inspired Arkham from these words, so I believe what he said next. The only way to make something that people will feel passionate about is if you feel inspired by the ideas yourself. We don't try and second-guess what other people want. We make the game we want to play. You know he's telling the truth, because for better or for worse, it was precisely that philosophy that made the Batmobile what it was in Arkham Knight. And it's tough to play this game, blind, first time, or the 80th New Game Plus, and not feel like Rocksteady adored what they were making. Oh, speaking of New Game Plus, did I mention Cities reconfigures every encounter in the entire game to provide a meaningfully distinct challenge? They love this game, and I'm betting that's why it is what it is. And so, why by God, I do too. People remember the emotions they had towards this series back then, myself among them. That's why it was tough for me to tell you that Arkham Asylum, though a certified hood classic, isn't what it used to be, but it was all the more worth it in light of what I get to tell you now. It fixed Asylum's problems, but in holding on to Asylum's overlooked strength, a wonderful game was made something more. Arkham City is a masterpiece. Thank you for watching.
When you hold my hand, I understand the magic that you do. You're my dream come true, my one and only you. Only you can make this change in me, for it's true, you are my destiny. When you hold my hand, I understand the magic that you do. You're my dream come true, my one